A little quick intro real quick. Hey, this is the Villain Report, and I'm talking to Corey, a self-avowed anti-fascist. So I go by Villain Report. I lived up in Portland, Oregon until recently. I lived downtown Portland, Oregon. When the George Floyd riots broke out, I dressed up as Antifa because I knew the riot was going to happen. And then I went out and just filmed on my camera for my own purposes because I just wanted to see it myself. I didn't dress up as Antifa to trick anybody. I just wanted to blend in so I could witness it without drawing attention to myself. I was very disturbed about what I saw. And then I went up to Chaz and Chop and I kind of did the same thing there. And I ended up seeing some teenage boys get killed there. And I've been filming these events and other events since that started. I am not a fan of Antifa. I think that they hurt people, and a lot of them are just motivated by selfishness and violence. I am also not a fan so much more and more of what you call the patriot crowd. I consider myself I call myself a philosophical anarchist, meaning that I don't really think anarchy can work, but I don't think that one man has the right to tell another man what to do or control another man unless they're directly harming them. So a lot of Antifa hates me because I film them doing horrible things, and I've shown it many times.
A lot of Antifa hates me too, so it's all good.
All right. Let me
I'm deemed problematic. I'm deemed too problematic in a lot of our spaces. So a lot of Antifa spaces, especially in the South, they're kind of like overly liberal, and it's kind of like a offshoot of like the Occupy movement, and they kind of like taken the brand of anti-fascism and have kind of like adopted it and turned it into something that is completely not. Like, I mean, because anti-fascism dates back to, anti-fascism is a response to something. It's not a proactive, we're going to go out here and have an Antifa rally. It's more like, oh, the Nazis are rallying downtown, we're going to go counter them. Like it's a response.
Before we go too deep into the conversation, let's get a couple more things handled. So you're obviously like I listened to you in a Twitter space the other day, and you were talking about where you're from, and you're showing your face here and your name, and I just want to make sure you're okay with all that going online, because today is a tricky time for private details online and that sort of thing. So you're comfortable with all that? All right.
Oh, I mean, if you haven't looked already, I mean, I was doxxed before doxing was a thing. So,
all right. So I'm going to do a little quick intro real quick. Hey, this is the Villain Report, and I'm talking to, do you go by Corey? Or do you
Corey,
have a,
yep.
Okay. This is Corey, a self-avowed anti-fascist. I ran into him on a Twitter space the other day. I enjoyed his openness and honesty and willing to engage. I haven't found that very much to be true in the Antifa circles. So if you guys don't know, I'm Villain Report. I've persona non grata amongst the rioters. You can find me on YouTube, Villain Report. You can find me on Twitter at Brave the Soul. You can find me on Telegram, Twitter, or Villain Report, and Facebook, Villain Report. And you could find me at other places through those. My goal has been, from day one, I've been kind of like blown around in the wind through all this chaos and COVID and government tyranny and idiot anarchists that are causing damage to our society and hurting people. And I've been swinging around. But the heart of what I've been trying to do is just talk to people, talk to opposing side and get conversations going. We've got to figure out how to get the division to stop. Otherwise, everybody's going to lose. We've got to find a common ground to move forward through. So today I'm interviewing Corey. He's a self-avowed anti-fascist. We're going to talk to him about what that means and how it's affected him and his views and that sort of thing. My goal today is not to have a debate and win him to my side or allow him to try to win me to his side. I just want to listen to his point of view and understand it. I want to understand his point of view. In the process of that, if a lot of people know that I don't suffer a fool. I don't know this guy at all, and if he starts spitting off nonsense, I'm going to ask him questions to clarify that. But I'm not going to try to own him or all the internet stuff's going on. I'm not going to try to make him my enemy. I'm not going to try to make him my friend. I'm not. I would hope we would be friends, but my goal is not to own him. And I know a lot of you on the right are going to be mad that I've gotten messages from people on the right because I announced that I was going to do this, and they're mad at me for even just talking to him. And I don't give a damn. I will do what I want to do. And if that pisses you off, who cares? My goal is to have conversations. I'm very disturbed by what's going on in the world today and the division and all the insanity. It's making me lose my mind. Like, the world is crazy today. Nothing makes sense. So with that, Corey, why don't you tell me who you are, where you are in the country, and you said you were an anti-fascist, and what you think that means.
Yeah. So I'm an anti-fascist. I'm an activist and organizer. Have been for about 7 years. I started off, very fairly conservative. My dad is a working class machinist unionist. But he grew up as a operations like golf professional at golf courses. So I grew up on the golf course, but it's still middle class, So my dad's operating the golf course, and everybody there, is a bunch of rich pricks, down here in the South and in these small towns. Like, he worked at Springfield Country Club, Portland, Tennessee, and Springfield. So I got to be around the culture of, money on top of being in small town rural America. So I was like, from the time I was 10 years old, I was opened up to all the racist jokes, all the sexist jokes, all the stuff that a typical Southern white male would be exposed to at some point in their life, whether it be college or whatever. I was exposed to very early. My dad, I just ran amok on the golf course, just learned to play golf and played with all the old guys while my dad worked. So there was no filter around me. So I picked up on a lot of those things, and going into, even in high school, I was doing persuasive essays on like why, like how illegal immigration is destroying America. So I did, I did all that. And, I grew up in the church. I grew up, my grandparents were very religious. So my grandmother would always take me to church, grew up in the church, went to private Christian school from 7th to 10th grade, finished in Metro. I went to Metro from kindergarten to 6th grade, and then finished junior and senior year in Metro. But then I waited a year, and then I ended up getting a golf scholarship to go to a private Christian school up near where my son lives. So I ended up going to private Christian school. That's where everything took a turn for me, because I was seeing that I'm at a private Christian school with 500 people up here in rural West Virginia, small town in West Virginia. And literally, we have curfew. I'm 20 years old. We have curfew. Boys can't go into girls' dorms. Girls can't go into boys' dorms. I got fined like $50 every time I didn't go to chapel or devotional. We had to take Bible courses. So it actually sent me into a dive where I wanted to learn, all these things. And then I started to unlearn a lot of things. And then I had to relearn a lot of things, which I'm still in the process of even doing to today. But that was where it all took a turn for me, was being opened up to what the culture of, a white male in the South, what you're going to be around. And even growing up in the inner city, like I'm born and raised in East Nashville, still am in East Nashville. And, and it's still, we're in a blue city, but yet you're still surrounded by conservative ideals. Our mayor is a conservative, moderate Democrat. There is really no quote unquote liberal, no leftist representation here, like no progressive representation as the
you
right.
You said a conservative, moderate Democrat. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, like a blue dog Democrat. like a Bill Clinton Democrat, like someone who doesn't go the full length to support socialism, who doesn't go the full length to support, you know, change on social issues, you know, like still the, you know, kind of iffy on LGBTQ and trans rights and stuff like that. Like that's what people don't understand is like when there's parties, you got party isn't left or right. Both parties in America have historically been right. There's never been no party hundreds, 200, 300 years ago. There's never been a party to exist to ever support gay rights and trans rights and open borders. There's never been a party like that. So every party that's ever existed in America has been right wing, like ideologically. Like it's and me growing up in the South, I resented the church and the people I grew up with around the golf course, around like going to private school.
Corey, can I stop you just for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
It looks like you're holding the phone in your hand. I don't know if you have a stand or anything. You're kind of just pointing it up your nostrils, and it's not making you look like it's not showing your true beauty and glory. I got you.
I got you. Yeah, I can't have you looking up my nose. You don't know.
Yeah, I want you to be portrayed in the best light, man.
I got you.
All right.
Hold on. Let me get set up here. Let me get set up. Be nice to get. I'll probably need to invest in a stand. What do you think?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Get one of those. It makes it easy.
Is that better?
It's a little better. Can you tip it up a little bit?
Yeah, I got you. All right. So, I grew up, you know, kind of understanding that I was taught and indoctrinated with so many things that would take me and some people, if they never got on that course, to relearn and unlearn all these different things that you're taught, especially living in the South. So I just grew to resent everything that I was taught. I completely rebelled against it. And
why?
It just
what drove you to reject your culture?
Well, not only is it embarrassing that, you know, being in the South and my like my family that like my mom and dad's side of the family I haven't seen in 15 years because they are a part of that, you know, just rural, you know, poor welfare, the you know, blaming immigrants and black folks for all their problems, you know, like that's what they're all about. And I just distanced myself so far from them.
Can I ask you, are you resentful that you grew up poor in a culture and like you had so much shoulder rubbing with rich people?
I mean, I'm given enough privilege here to be comfortable because I'm a white male in the South. So though I experience classism and though I experience, you know, working class struggle, I resent that the people that I grew up around, the people I went to private school with, they were, how do I say it? They are the most elitist, entitled, embarrassing group of people. They're so cliquey, and it ain't even just the students. What pissed me off was that it's the staff and everybody else too. It's like a clique. It's like a tight ass club where all these people who have this money and whoever donates the most money to the booster club gets, you know, they get to host the next, you know, reunion or something like that. Like, I mean, it's just and we were never a part of that club. And not only did the staff and the students like, you know, create that atmosphere where people who wore the same clothes 2 days in a row, or if you wore the same pair of shoes you wore just 3 months ago before summer break, like you would get ostracized, you'd get shunned if you couldn't keep up. And, you know, I mean, it's just when you're around that for so long, you get tired of it. And I got tired of it. So, but that was the turning point of me to become more politically motivated. My first organized rally was Mike Brown Solidarity with Ferguson rally in Nashville. I organized with BLM. Uh, there was no anti-fascist group active.
You're in
Yeah.
Tennessee, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
like did you travel over to Southern Missouri for that?
I did not. No, I
No.
didn't. That I hadn't. At that point I had not been in any street activism. Um, my first major action, I was in Charlottesville. That's when we were first, a good Antifa coalition, and when there wasn't much infighting. We had all banded together during that time period. Right before Charlottesville, we had gone to Pikeville, where the Traditionalist Workers Party and Matthew Heimbach and all them had a rally. That was one of our first uh, rallies as a huge network, and then just after that, we just have gone to a bunch of different right wing rallies, whether it be Richard Spencer, his speaking tour. Um, we've just been to a bunch of different actions and have confronted fascists
Do
in
you
ways that.
think are you
Go
in
ahead.
favor of like stopping people that you disagree with, stopping them from being able to speak?
Um, well, I think what people should understand is that all forms of government, especially evil forms of government, fascism, they all start as speech. Nothing ever goes 0 to 100. There's a gradual process. Like, there is no just they turn the switch and then millions of people are killed. Like, it's a process that 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 starts with speech. Now, when you allow certain speech to kind of bleed through into dictating culture and politics and laws and policy, that's when people will, like, because here's the thing, it's what we're disagreeing on. It's not like it's a different taste in music or a different taste in movies or something like that. Like, those are things where you're like, okay, well, let's talk about differences and what and all that stuff. But when it comes to real world effects on certain people, and then to expect those people to just passively accept their situation. I mean, because look, we all know that if the white community endured it on any level what the black community has endured, they would have already used violence, burned shit down. I mean, we know that's what the white community would do. We know.
What do you think the black community is enduring right now?
Well, it's systemic. So it's like, you and I won't be here maybe 50, 60 years from now, but everything you see around you will be. The system will be. The system will maybe have changed a little bit. It might regress. It might progress. We don't know. But the thing about systemic oppression, I mean, it transcends race, because I mean, it's also a working class struggle as well. And that's where I think people tend to gravitate towards Western imperialist indoctrination into supporting systems that oppress them. Like, so if you're an oppressor, how are you going to get millions of people to not burn your house down? You have to get them to want to be you. You have to get them to support a system that benefits you and make them think that, hey, I can be him. Not it. I mean, because if you looked at this population, like a village of 100 people, and you saw 99 people working and one person sitting in the corner collecting all the resources, collecting all, like, reaping all the benefits, at some point there's going to be an overthrow of that. And I think America is at that tipping point where there's going to be an overthrow of the capitalist system, and it's been long overdue. And that's what the elites are afraid of. Like, people don't understand that the American bureaucracy and the American fascist government is here solely because of capitalism. And that's why they feed you Red Scare propaganda for decades to be anti-communism, like, why is communism the enemy to America? Because communists do not bend to America's rule. And that's historically been true. Like, why is there a trade embargo on Cuba for 60 years and no trade embargo on China? Because of money. That's all it is.
It was because Cuba was allowing Russia to place nuclear weapons on their land, and we were trying to strangle their monetary gain so that they would have an incentive to stop allowing Russia to put nukes that could attack us there. That's why the Cuban embargo was there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even aside from the missile crisis, I mean, there was.
Hold on. It's point of order. Like, I could tell, like, your back's gonna start hurting. Could you get comfortable and still that we're mostly getting a film shot up your nose.
Still?
Yeah. Like, your eyes are barely on the camera.
All right, hold on.
Just get comfortable. I want you to be comfortable while we talk.
I got you. Oh. All right.
All right. This will be a good view.
All right, let's see. Hang on 1 second. If I can get it to stay. Well, fuck. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get it. I probably should have done all this shit before we got on.
No worries.
Hang on 1 second.
Yeah, if you want to get in these conversations with people and like influence the culture, like I'd invest in like a little. You can go to Best Buy and get a little Joby tripod. It's a little short tripod. It'll enable you to set your phone up in comfortable places.
Not you can much. Tell this isn't my. There we go. How about that?
All right, that works. So we're kind of jumping all over the place here, and I don't feel like I'm getting the heart of like your philosophy and the heart of who you are.
Right. And I mean, I'm down. That's the goal here. See, that's the thing. I'll get to ranting because I mean, my brain is always.
No, it's good conversation. You're making good points and you're being genuine, but I don't feel like we're getting to like the foundation of everything.
Ask me. Like,
so you're talking about a lot of things like you're talking about common words and common phrases that are used, and you mentioned the LGBT plight and the black plight and the capitalist versus communism and the tyranny of government. Where did all this come from? You grew up in a conservative Christian education system. Like, when and where did you start getting exposed to these ideas, or did you just start going to the library and reading yourself, or was it like you started following certain people on the internet and like watching YouTube videos? Like,
as opposed to the typical white liberal, I actually am in the black community. Like, I'm a videographer. My best friends, like, if you've gone through my whole history of everything, go on YouTube. Like, all of my best friends are black. Like, my brother's black. Like, obviously not by blood, but I mean, just the people that I've endured the most with have been black folks. Like, and there's more people in my life who are black than who are white. The only white people in my family are my mom, my dad, my sister, my closest family. Like, no, there's nobody else in my family that I see on a daily basis who is white. Like, I don't hang out with anybody who's white on a regular basis ever. However, like my another brother who I live with right now, he's from Egypt. He migrated here when he was 12. He left during the war that sprung out over there. So he came over here. He and me and him met doing music videos. So we linked together and started working on a lot of different projects together. But I mean, and that's another thing that helped me, I guess, understand a lot of the things going on, because when and I've experienced this way too many times, but I can drive around my city with anything in the car with me and nothing happens. Nobody, no, but if the second anybody who is black or brown gets in the car with me, it's always been an issue. Like not every time, but literally zero times when it's just me. Like, and that's the thing. I have good run-ins with cops. Like, it's not like a cop has just abused me, brutalized me, and threw me on. Like, but that's me understanding that that's the benefit I get. That's just a benefit that a lot of people don't understand that they have when they're white. You don't get it's not your normal instance to get your car searched or get patted down or and I mean and then when you see it happen in real life, and it's not just a movie, you're not just seeing it in a textbook, you're not just seeing it on CNN, like you're there and you're witnessing it. I mean, it has a different effect on you. And I don't think a lot of white people have that experience, especially white liberals. And I think that's why white liberals get such a bad rep, and that their praxis is so trash, is because they aren't actually they support these movements and this they support all these causes from afar. They're not embedded in these causes. They're not they're not embedded in these communities. Like they would never stand up against a police department engaged in racist practice. Like they would never do any of that. So but and that's where
you really believe that there are police departments engaged in racist behavior?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. That's just a normal fact. I mean, that's not even like a debate. I mean, but then again, I mean, it's generational. Like it's something that it's a culture based on power and who's held the power, who maintains the power, the status quo. Like,
Well,
in order to
that's
keep.
with tyranny, and that's with policing. I've always been a person that's been against authority. Like I was a rebellious young man, and
Right.
when the riots broke out, I kind of like flipped the other way. I was like, well, maybe we need to like give a little bit so that society doesn't fall into chaos. But then overall, my filming in different cities across the country, I watched all these police obeying stand down orders. Like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
supposedly like they're the protectors of society, and then I would watch them just stand there and watch while people assaulted each others or people crimes would be committed, and they just stand there and watch it, and it really bothered me to the core. And I've also watched police beat the crap out of people unnecessarily, and
Mhm.
so I'm very against the state. I think that power corrupts, but I don't see it being a racial thing. I've had many encounters with cops where they have treated me like shit. They've slammed me against their car, their cop hood,
Mhm.
searched my vehicle, searched my person, denigrated me as a person while they're doing it, treated me like crap, and
Mhm.
it had nothing to do with
Were you embedded in any culture that required them to treat you like that? Like, were you
No,
around
no, I've always
drugs?
been a loner.
Right.
No, I've just been my own man, and
Because see, that's a typical experience of a 15-year-old black man, like a black boy. Like that's a typical. I mean, what you just said to me, I've seen happen countless times to children who were just leaving a playground or
I
you know.
think I think the black culture in America typically tends to be a little lippy, and I'm not a person that submits. I'm a stubborn person. If I haven't done something wrong, I'm not just gonna like kiss the officer's ass. I don't lip off to the officer or whatever, but it's clear that I'm not just begging him to let me go on my way. Um, and but
Well, see, and that's the thing about power. Power concedes nothing without a demand. So, you know, at some point, because I mean, a lot of people don't talk about this. Like anytime violence comes up, it's always about whether it's Antifa, BLM, the riots after George Floyd. Like, there's riots going on in Spain on a daily basis. Like, there's riots going on in Europe on a daily basis against, whether it's unions, whether it's metal workers, whether it's laborers of any kind. going to war against, private militaries, their own government. I mean, that's just a normal day in Europe. So I mean, like, the thing about anti-fascism, and what I wish people would understand, is that it's an action that requires direct resistance. Like, it requires it's not just, oh, I support this, or, oh, this is how I feel about this. Like, at some point, yeah, you have your beliefs, but at some point you have to put that belief into motion. And if you're going to actually dismantle corrupt systems, you have to actually do something. It goes beyond just taking a stance. Like, you have to take action. I mean,
Well,
just taking a
what do you
stance.
think about the Portland riots? What do you think about them going and like bashing in the windows of Starbucks and Target and just destroying all the small businesses in downtown, graffitiing the whole city?
Well, and that's what I here's the thing. If they had just stayed on the sidewalk, didn't break any windows, didn't break anything, didn't engage in any disruption, held their witty signs, and who does that who does that benefit? Like, who benefits the most from a people obeying every law and not engaging in any disruption, not engaging in any violence at all? Like,
Who
imagine if
benefits
that.
from violence against innocent people? Who benefits from a broken Starbucks window? Who benefits from shutting
Well,
down the Target for a
and
week?
that's the thing. That's a product of systemic injustice. I know that sounds real SJW and shit like that, but on a real level, when you deprive a community of justice, no matter whether that community is white, black, brown, they will lash out in ways that won't be pretty to people. It won't be pleasant. Yeah, it makes people uncomfortable to see windows getting broken, fights breaking out, like things like that. But that is a symptom and a product of capitalism decaying and the American empire crumbling. Like,
Let
that's
me ask
just
you,
what will happen.
why you said that you most of the people in your life are black and brown.
Yeah.
You're white as can be. Obviously, your
I'm
ancestors
Irish.
were like lacking
Irish.
melanin as far back as you can go.
Yeah.
Why is it that most of the people in your life are not white and they're black and brown?
I guess it's just who I decided to be around. Like, I just, when I'm around white folks, it's always gossip. It's always some cliquey shit. I mean, black and brown people, their culture is way more welcoming. It's way more, I mean, it's just more comfortable. It's more enjoyable. You don't worry about the things that come with being around some sorority fraternity type people. Like, I just,
When I've been in the South, the little bit that I've been in the South, or when I've talked to people that live in the South, the way I understand it, it's kind of self-segregated. Like the
Mhm.
different communities stick to themselves.
Yeah.
So why I assume the majority of your family rolls around in the white community. Like, why have you rejected that and you
My
roll
family,
around and
my family's as recluse as I am. Like, I mean, I don't really
you're
engage.
not mixed race.
No.
You're clearly from two white parents.
Yeah, without a doubt. But they're not socialites either. I'm not a socialite either. I don't go, and I don't. The people that ended up being in my life and the ones that I've stuck with are just so happen to be black folks. That's who decided to stick around. Like, yeah, I've kicked it with white people from time to time, but they find something else to do and they go and do something else. And I'm sure a lot of my activism and a lot of my things that I do have played a role in which people want to be around me. But at the same time, I don't make myself available to you know just I'm not going out here trying to join any clubs or join any like I'm not trying to go do trivia with nobody. Like, I don't do anything. So like, I just live my life, and the people that I just so happen to kick it with just happen to be black. So
Do you
I
think that
mean,
maybe that mindset leads to functionality or dysfunctionality. Like we can look at the negative aspects of like creating a closed group and curating who the people that you interact with, and like you keep saying like the sorority fraternity kind of thing, but um,
Yeah, I mean,
if we're going to look at the claims of culture in America to where like black and brown people are oppressed and black people are oppressed way more, and you're talking about those cultures just let anybody in and whatever goes, and the white culture that is supposedly
well, that's my
well
experience.
better off,
I'm not
they're
going.
curating who can be there and who can't be there and who they're going to hang out with, who they can't hang out with. And you look at the most rich people in America, those are these Asian groups, and Asian groups tend to be very, very insular, and they tend to insulate their race and have racial communities, racial gatherings, and racial marriages and that sort of thing. And maybe there's some truth to choosing who you interact with and having a standard and saying that the people that have the same culture, the same language, the same values, the same goals, I'm going to align with them and we're going to move forward together versus a culture that says anything goes, everyone's welcome, no matter we don't have any standards of your beliefs or your actions. And I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm like, I'm trying to find the answer that doesn't make everybody that disagrees with you an evil person. Like maybe there are mechanical things in the universe that just are, without being right or wrong, good or bad.
Well,
Maybe
those things are
choosing
also.
not to hang out with people that don't have the same goals or the same culture. Maybe that causes production and value to be created.
Well, it makes you wonder what dictates culture. Like what makes culture a culture. Like, I mean, you got, because here's the thing: when you got, Irish culture, there is no white culture. You got Irish culture, you got German culture, there is no white culture. Like, and most cultures that you see black and brown like folks come from, white people have somehow managed to either steal it, take it as their own, whether it be a form of music, whether it be a form of clothing. Like, it just, I mean, it's just that's what. And like, I grew up around white folks that, when I went to school with white folks, especially in Metro, they going around saying the N word and getting tattoos on their face and wearing gold teeth. And it's like, you know, that's just it. I feel like
What's
that's
what's
what white
Metro?
people like to do. Metro is metropolitan, not just in the city.
Are you
Yeah.
talking in
So
general? Is that a place like a
Metro.
certain
Well, when I
city?
say Metro, I mean Metro school, like Metro public school.
Where's that in the country?
Yeah, any metro city, like any metropolitan area, like any inner city, like we just call it, Metro public schools, Metro public
So you're not
Nashville.
that's not slang for like the area and the city that you live in. You're
No,
using that as like urban. It means urban.
yeah, yeah, just
Okay.
like
All
the
right.
school system is called Metro Nashville Public Schools, MNPS. Like, it's just like, when I say metro, like I'm talking about Metro public schools. And then when I say private, that's the only reason I was saying that, was to differentiate that I also attended
Okay.
a private school.
What do
So
you think? What do you think about this? I've in looking in all this BLM stuff and listening in on black spaces and that sort of thing and trying to understand the perspective that's going on there. I hear a lot of victimology, like we were slaves, we're oppressed, systemic racism, we don't have the opportunities, they're keeping us down, and and I don't want to argue whether that's true or not, but for the sake of argument, like why like
we all inherit
why
the
are they
system.
people that are easily walked on? Like it's not like we wouldn't look at a man and like somebody's attacking him. Like let's say that a grown man was attacked by a petite woman and she beat the crap out of him. We
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't respect that man. We wouldn't be like, oh, there, she beat you up. We're like, no, like, why couldn't you defend yourself? Don't you have any strength? Like, what caused you to be in a situation where you got walked on and trampled on? And like, that's a virtue too. Like, I don't see it as a virtue. It's just like, I'm so nice and I'm so good and I'm so pure that bad guys can just walk all over me. what do you think about this black victim ideology? Like, there's something missing there. Like, why?
Well,
What's
anytime,
causing this group
anytime,
of people to be walked on? Like, well, don't they have some backbone?
well, I mean, you would see that throughout history, anytime that they do move towards that, that liberation, those resources get deprived. Their systems get, like, whether it's Tulsa, you'll see white people just go in. I mean, because then all a white girl's got to do is get in an elevator with a black dude and say something happened, and then boom, the whole town's burned down. Like, I
But
mean, that's how fragile
you're
white
you're
folks are.
just you're rephrasing the same thing I'm trying to
Yeah,
address. Like,
but no, I'm
why
and
throughout history have they been able to be walked on? Is there something about that culture that doesn't function in society?
well, it's
Is
what
there
we've
something
created.
about that belief system that causes them to get trampled on? Like, maybe they should update their belief system. And I'm not just talking about black people. Anybody that has a history of being run under, like, it's like,
Well, that's the
if I have a
that's the
if I
struggle
have a
because
situation where, like, I'm having a negative response to my actions over and over and over and over again, and I'm losing over and over again, I have to reevaluate. And even if I had the best intention and I was the most pure person, like, I have to say to myself, like, I'm losing over and over again. I got to reframe
But when
my
we talk about when we talk about when we're framing the argument around the white working class man, the white, the blue collar, working class white man, the talk about victimization never comes up, because we know that in class struggle and even race struggle, because I think that's what you were talking about, was race struggle, and black people, using victimhood and victimology and stuff like that. Like, in any struggle period, whether it's the working class, the white working class, the black working class, the brown working class, like, it's all a fight for liberation. And anytime that gains momentum, you will see the US federal government completely dismantle that. Like, whether it's through psyops, whether it's through COINTELPRO operations, whether it's through JTRIG operations, they embed themselves into any system that does try to migrate away from, hey, we're getting trampled on, we're like, we can't defend ourselves. And when they migrate to building their own and defending themselves, the weight of the U.S. government wouldn't allow that. Whether it's the white working class or the black, the inner cities, like LGBTQ, whatever group you wanna insert, fill in the blank with, on fighting the American imperialist system. And I know it's a lot of big words, but I mean, just in general, the American government in
What do you
general.
think about this take?
Yeah.
From my perspective, the white man and the white culture is being attacked right now by federal government and the media. We're constantly, anytime white people express their own values that are centered towards their people's betterment, they're called white separatists, white nationalists, white supremacists. The
Well, these
media
are terms that
slanders
they've
us
also
constantly.
these are terms that they've also coined themselves. Like, it's not like just a term thrown upon them. Like, a lot of these people who have pushed these agendas and this, alt right, whatever, like Richard Spencer types, the Nathan D'Amigo types, the whatever, whoever you want to call it. Like, a lot of those terms are what they identify themselves. So they are
Well,
white identitarian groups.
you've
Also,
got on your Twitter right now, fuck Kyle Rittenhouse.
hell yeah.
What the President Joe Biden called him a white supremacist. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think he, well,
Former
fuck Joe
former Vice
Biden, first
President
of all.
Joe Biden.
Fuck,
Former Vice President Joe
fuck,
Biden said Kyle Rittenhouse was a white
Well, Joe
supremacist.
Biden is trash. Joe Biden is a fucking white supremacist himself, but that's a whole nother topic.
No, I agree.
Um,
He is. He's got very close
yeah.
ties to the leader of the
I mean,
KKK back in the day. That's how he rose up.
he started his
My
political,
Negroes
like,
Satchel Paige. Like, how is he getting away with that shit right now?
because
The great
liberals don't
Negro
do shit.
Satchel Paige. How does he get away with that?
Because the liberals will literally give passes to Democrats for anything. Vote blue no matter who. That's that fucking crowd.
But anyways, what do you think about Joe Biden calling Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist?
I think Kyle Rittenhouse is he wanted, first of all, he wanted to fit in. You could just tell he's a kid that probably got made fun of. Like I mean, you could just kind of tell. And
He's kind of nerdy.
yeah, real nerdy. So he wanted to fit in. So he probably linked up with some boogs on the Kenosha Guard page, and it's like, hey, we're gonna go into this. We're gonna insert our, because here's my thing: when you go into a situation like that, I think I think then you become a willing combatant when you enter an arena like that, and because we all know Kenosha was a war zone, and how a community rises up is subjective. Like if they want to, I mean, there wasn't really much organized rioting like that happens, because right after that, because you don't really have much time to organize anything when you're whether you're Antifa or any other leftist group. You don't really have much time to coordinate much of anything right on the first night of like the shooting happened, and then shit just fucking pops off. Those
Dude,
are local, those are
Corey, that
outrage.
I'm gonna call you out. That's BS. You look at Portland Antifa; those motherfuckers are organized as hell. And
Wait, I'm talking about in Kenosha. I'm talking about in Kenosha. I'm specifically
no, but
talking
you
about
you were you were talking about in general. The idea is that you can't. It's not easy to organize, but that's not
well,
true.
not on a short like when you have months to in
Tell me,
advance
tell me
to
how
organize.
all these like flash mob robberies in Southern California are happening at the last moment. It's
I mean,
today. It's
these,
so easy to
but
organize things.
but here's the thing. Back then, I mean, think about all this shit has gone down for decades. It's just you're seeing it more now because there's more cameras. There's more, like back in the day when there was no cameras and you could get away with murder if you wanted to. Like imagine all the things that we didn't see. It's like nothing's really changing. Like everything's the same. Like everything's really the same. Like it was just as crazy back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
No,
Like
no,
it was crazy
they
shit.
they were not having flash mobs
Oh
looting
yeah.
stores back in the 50s.
Okay. Well, 60s,
Are you
70s,
familiar
80s.
with what I'm talking about? Since California decriminalized shoplifting from,
Mm.
I believe it's anything below $950 isn't prosecuted. So you can go into a store and there's plenty of videos, and it's happening in other parts of the country too. But people just go into stores with garbage bags, and they like go into Walgreens and just start dumping everything off the shelf into their garbage bag, and they leave. There's been in the last couple weeks, there's been more nefarious flash mobs where like 20, 30, 50 people just show up at a location, they break in, and they take everything out of that store at once. They had that happen at Chicago the other night. I believe it was the night of Kyle's verdict. They went into a Nordstrom, and they all knew to show up at the same time. A couple of them got arrested, but they all flash mobbed the place. There is an intense organization in this kind of stuff, and it's easy to
Where
do
do
now. You
where do
just get
those
on
products
WhatsApp.
where do those products go? You think that
They
they take?
I think mostly they had a police officer doing an interview the other day, and I can't even tell you where to find this or where it was from, but he was saying that like I think he was LA, and they're saying that they noticed these flash mob robberies happen, and then they'll find like illegal black markets, little like Saturday market's not the right word, but like a little under the table places selling all that shit that got stole.
Hmm. Which is usually typically poor communities who will probably pay half the price for that product.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
there's been
Which
several videos throughout the country where people go in and they fill a whole shopping cart or several shopping cart with all the laundry detergent in the store, because that's one of the high value items in a grocery store, and it's easy to handle, and they steal that and they sell it for lesser to the poor communities. But are you claiming that no, nobody has to starve in America. Nobody
no,
starves in America unless they choose to. So are you saying because people are poor, they have the right to just go steal and rob from people?
I think capitalism has reached its final. It's on its last leg. I think the things that you're seeing happening in the Western capitalist atmosphere in general. I mean the riots, the uprisings, the I guess the new flash mobs that are rising up. I mean it's all symptomatic. It all plays out based on the people's willingness to stand up and do something about it. Like here's the thing. I think every person on the right, whether it's Fox News, whether it's the MAGA chuds, whether it's, your typical Tea Party old Karens, like, no matter who you are, I think all of them people would just be happy if every person in the inner city, every person on the left, just stayed quiet, didn't do anything, just kept going to work, okay, I got to go work 3 jobs now just to keep the lights on. Okay, I'll do that. Like, I'm just gonna do that. Like at some point, when you keep pushing that line, at some point it's gonna fill over, and you're gonna have things occur that a lot of people who have reaped the benefits of living in this society, they will feel uncomfortable, because they will feel like it's tearing at their privilege, that they're seeing these things crumble, and they're afraid that they're going to lose that privilege. Like, you don't really see people who live in poverty really just be upset at, inner cities lashing out when a black man is killed, like after George Floyd. Like, not a lot of people, like,
Yes, you do.
mainly the people who
Yes,
are
you do.
upset. Yeah,
No,
but
no,
not a
that's not
lot.
true.
Not as much as you see in
No,
rural America.
a big chunk of the MAGA crowd are impoverished white people. A lot of the MAGA red hat wearing people are very poor and
It
very
makes you
impoverished.
wonder, why do
And
they support a system that not only oppresses them and makes them poor, but they will literally support that same system just because it makes black folks poor. Like, why? Like
no,
it's almost like
that's not
I'm
true.
okay with
That's
this
just
system.
not true.
That,
They're not just like seething at the mouth, frothing and hoping bad things happen to black people. They're just they're poor and
yeah,
they're
I'm telling you
struggling,
right now,
but
if a black man is
they are not
killed,
supporting it when people
check this.
randomly go out and hurt other people or
Okay,
steal other
check
people's things or damage other people's property. That's what they're standing
check
against. They're
check this.
saying
If there's
whether
a
or not
black
I'm
Kyle
poor,
Rittenhouse,
this is not
if there
okay to hurt other people.
if there's a black Kyle Rittenhouse tomorrow, if there's a situation where there's a MAGA rally or an anti-vax rally or a fucking right-wing rally in general, if a black Antifa, wearing BLM or wearing anything Antifa, if he was black or brown or anything like that, he went to a rally and he ended and some MAGA chud fucking like started mouthing off some Proud Boy fuck, because we know that's what they do. Let's not pretend we ain't seen if the shoe was on the other foot, we have seen many times where Antifa could have literally just pulled a Kyle Rittenhouse and mowed down a few Trump supporters. We know that we've seen where instances
You
where an
mean that
Antifa
BLM
person
guy
could have
that
done
just
that.
ran over the Christmas festival the other day, and they're
I
calling it
don't
an
give.
SUV attack?
Well, I mean, I don't know of any organization he was with, or if he was ever even in the street. I mean, I know he's posted BLM, which millions of people have. But hold on, real quick. Which, there we go. Which millions of people have. So saying you. I mean, it's kind of like somebody. God damn. It's
No,
kind of like
I'm literally answering your question. You're saying like, what if there was a black quote unquote Kyle Rittenhouse? The way you're framing
yeah.
Kyle Rittenhouse, I think he acted completely in self-defense. But this dude mowed down 57 people at a Christmas festival. It was a white
But
European
you see how now if that person had ever posted
celebration.
anything about Trump, you wouldn't hear about it. You wouldn't hear it on
That's
Fox
not what happened.
News.
He posted
You
about BLM and we're not hearing
I know
about it.
he
You're
did,
only
but what
hearing
I'm
about it from
saying
the
is
alternative
how
media. The
many? Okay,
mainstream media is saying that there was a car accident and that there was an SUV caused an incident. They're not
what
saying this
about Nicholas
black.
Cruz? What about Nicholas Cruz, who wore a Trump hat? Was that ever posted? If he had been wearing a BLM hat,
Which one's he? Is he the angry
Parkland,
half Asian
Parkland,
guy that like shut up the girls?
no, no, Parkland,
Nicholas
Parkland.
Cruz, Parkland. Remind me which one that was.
In Florida, Parkland, when he went and shot. There's
Oh
like
yeah,
20 kids.
severely mentally ill kid that was
Yeah,
living in
but
foster
here's the
care and
thing.
he was being abused and
He posted about Trump and wore a Trump hat. So, but you didn't hear about any of that on any mainstream news, on Fox News, on right-wing media, Ben Shapiro, you can name it, Candace Owens, it don't matter.
Yeah, because
Nobody said anything
there's
about it.
nothing
So,
there's nothing to tie Trump and his policies with some crazy kid going up and shooting a kid in school.
so
He
why
wasn't
is that
shooting
same logic
he
not
wasn't
applied?
shooting black kids. He because the story was shown there. He was a
Why is that
mentally
logic not
deranged kid.
applied? Why is that logic not applied when it's reversed? Why is it always, oh, well, he posted BLM 2 years ago, so he's like, it's like,
No, it
I'm trying
wasn't
to
2 years
understand.
ago. This guy had made plenty of
Okay, but what did he
accusations of
do? Okay, but what did he do before
he
BLM?
ran a whole
No,
crowd of white people
but
over celebrating
but
their
in the
white
name of
religious
BLM,
holiday.
in the name of BLM, or
I
I mean, because here's the thing. Now
I
you're
haven't made
dealing
that
with,
claim, but I'm saying that he has made threats about hurting people before, and he's made
well,
allegiance to
yes,
BLM,
I
and
mean that's mental
he's
illness. But here's the thing: you can't conflate, because you just said Nicholas Cruz was also mentally ill and deranged. So why
what
can't you
are
say? Why can't you use that same logic
you
here?
making claims that the black car attacker was mentally ill?
I'm sure. I'm sure he does suffer from mental
What's
illness.
you're just assuming that, but there was
I mean, I am. I
clear
mean,
and
you.
present
I'm not.
evidence
I
that
don't. I'm sure you don't diagnose anybody either, but I'm sure that doesn't stop you
no,
from
there was
calling
clear
somebody
and
what you think
present
they are.
evidence of the kid, Parkland kid. Like I think he was actually diagnosed as mentally ill and he was on medications.
Okay. Okay,
So
but I mean,
there's
what about the El
actual
Paso
evidence.
kid?
I'm
How
not
about
just
the El
saying that
Paso kid?
I'm not saying this person looks crazy, so I'm going to say he's mentally ill. Like he literally had mental illness.
What I'm
If you
saying is
want to show
right
me that
wingers.
the car attacker at that Christmas festival was mentally ill, show
Here's
me the evidence.
here's the funny part is that right wingers will literally sit there and wait days for a leftist to do something, but in those days there has been like 100 things that right wingers have done that don't get talked about because we're all waiting on that one leftist to do some Kyle Rittenhouse shit just so everybody can talk about terrorism and violence and how we need to go after Antifa and declare them terrorists.
why did you write fuck Kyle Rittenhouse on your Twitter?
I mean, because fuck him. I mean, he's
Why?
an opportunist because he's an opportunist, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that he didn't provoke that situation. Where
How
was
did
his
he provoke
boogaloo
it?
buddies? Here's my thing. Because one, he asked his friends, and he testified that he asked them to go down the street where all the people were, and they said no because guess what? In those boogaloo groups, there was some smart motherfuckers that said no, that's gonna cause some shit. Well, the only person there that was really ready to cause some shit was Kyle, so he went off walking by his fucking self to go and waited for a situation to arise
How did he
where
cause
he
shit?
could. I mean, for it, I mean the same reason any person that would like. I mean,
I'm not trying to own you, man.
because
I want to hear your
here's the thing.
perspective. How did he cause
Us
something?
people want us to be naive and pretend that just like any Proud Boy, any Boogaloo group, that they don't insert themselves into already provoked situations to be opportunists and do something to own the libs or to prove that the left wing is violent and try to
I'm going to
discredit
be
any.
stubborn on this. How
Okay.
did Kyle instigate anything?
Well, I mean, I mean, the video footage clearly shows, and people have said that he pointed his gun at people multiple times, and he might have done it, subconsciously,
The video
unconsciously. He might have
evidence
just,
it has
but
come out and it's been analyzed over and over. He never pointed his gun at anybody, I unless
no.
they
Okay,
were a
so
threat.
here's my question. Okay, here's my question. Then. The only threat to him at that time was Rosenbaum, right? So I just want to put this into a scenario. Let's say you and I'm gonna say, I'm gonna put Kyle Rittenhouse and Rosenbaum. Like, all right, we're in the street and you or I run after you. Okay, I'm gonna put myself in Rosenbaum situation. I'll run after you and I'm chasing you. You run, you retreat a little bit, you turn around and you drop me. Boom. And people are trying to assess me, trying to help me out. And you're sitting there, you have enough time to make a phone call, and then you take off running. Self-defense cases, once you take off running and you leave the scene when there is no other active threat against you, And then you just start perceiving everything around you as a threat. I mean,
have you been
he
to a riot?
might have gotten away. He might have gotten away with the Rosenbaum. Okay, like that is the one. But you have to account for every shot taken after that. Because if he would have dropped his gun and said, "This guy was coming at me, he was attacking me," then you have all these cameras. Like then you could possibly get away with self-defense. But when you run up the street and people don't, because here's the thing, you're running to people and they don't know what the fuck just happened. No, like 99% of the people that Kyle Rittenhouse was running past didn't know anything of what
about the people? What about the people that were chasing him and were attacking him? And people were saying, "What did he do?" And like, "Oh, he shot somebody."
But you talk about what's in Kyle Rittenhouse's mind and his state of mind at the time, that he had to retreat because he was being attacked. He was about to be under attack. He was going to get killed. So that's it. That's his state of mind. But what about the state of mind? Why is there a bubble? Why is there a bubble?
Have you ever been in a riot? Have you ever been in a riot?
Yeah, plenty. Fuck yeah. Many.
You understand the mob mentality that happens in a riot. People don't think straight, and they just start attacking things because other people. It's like a bunch of lemmings, and they just like see a target, and you can see it. It's clear as video. He's just trying to get the hell out of there, and people start attacking him.
But here's the thing: there was no violence.
Punches him in the back of the head.
But here's the thing: there was no violence against people like that day. Like there wasn't fist fights breaking out in the street amongst locals. Like they were just engaging in property damage. So it wasn't like you're like this huge melee, fist flying everywhere, and you don't know what's gonna happen. It's not like that's not how I've been in riots, and I've been in riots where people are playing
all the violence that happened to Kyle Rittenhouse.
But the thing is that I know
people were literally chasing him and trying to kill him.
I've been chased by right wingers, and here's the thing: if I use self-defense and I killed them, you wouldn't be talking to me right now. I would either have gotten killed myself, or I would be in jail or prison. I wouldn't get the benefit of self-defense. And I think that's what a lot of people on the right or center right or wherever a lot of people, even liberals on this issue that support Kyle Rittenhouse don't understand.
Would you say it's good that he got the benefit of self-defense? That gives us all the standard.
It doesn't give us
self-defense.
But we know that we know that's not how that works. Okay, engage with me here. The Portland, you probably know this. Michael Reinhold, right? You know that story.
Okay.
Are you telling me that he wouldn't have had a better case of self-defense than Kyle Rittenhouse? Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't even touched. And Joseph Rosenbaum didn't have a gun on him, didn't have bear mace, didn't have anything.
Michael Reinhold was hunting Jay Danielson.
Hunting.
Michael Reinhold did not have an active.
Now, why can't right wingers be considered hunting when they take their guns to a community that they don't even belong to?
No,
why can't that be considered hunting?
Let's get on the same page here. Michael Reinhold was hunting Jay Danielson. Danielson
because he stood in a garage?
He did not stood in a garage? There was no garage. Like, you don't know the story. There's no garage in that story.
Okay, aside from
nobody was in a garage in that story.
Here's the thing: you can't consider it hunting when you have when there is no like paparazzi. Somebody could come to your doorstep right now with a phone in their camera, and they're not hunting you. Like hunting is a very because if you want to talk about hunting, who was the one that said we got one right here? That was
the anarchist.
Jay Daniels.
No,
that was who?
No.
We got one right here. You telling me that wasn't? And then you hear, where? Right here?
No, hold on a second. Let's slow down. No, let me answer you. No, that was either Michael Reinhold or the guy that was walking with Michael Reinhold. I'm pretty sure it was Michael Reinhold that said that. They were literally stalking these people, and they laid in wait.
But you listen to Michael Reinhold talk in that interview on Vice, and then you listen to the voice that says, "Where? Right here?" And it's literally, clearly a fucking MAGA chud yelling at you.
You need to watch the video.
Okay. Aside from that, he pulled out bear mace.
Hold on a second. Let's be coherent here. Hold on a second. You've made several claims that are completely wrong. Nobody was in a garage on the Jay Danielson shooting. Nobody was in a garage. That did not happen. That is false. No, there was no garage in there. That is not true.
What was he standing under?
Michael Reinhall. I might be wrong. That was him, but it was either him or the guy that was standing with him. It was the left wingers that said, "We got one right here." They were talking about MAGA Patriot Prayer people. They were stalking them. They initiated the contact.
I watched the whole. Now hold on. I watched the whole night when they was driving in their fucking caravans because they was too scared to go down and confront. So they drove around with Tiny and all them in the back of the truck with some paintball guns and shit. That's the same night, right? And they was they was shooting the paintball guns outside the fucking trucks, driving by, and yeah.
Man,
I mean, come on. I
you're
watched
looking at
all
the
of
spin.
that.
Do you know what
watched
happened that
all of
day? It was a MAGA truck parade. It started at Clackamas Town Center, which is a mall in Clackamas, just southeast of Portland. They drove up 205, they went to 84, and then they drove down through downtown Portland. On the bridges entering Portland, they had leftists attacking their vehicles and trying to block the road. And once they got into downtown Portland, they had a large group of black bloc and leftists blocking the road and damaging their cars and throwing things at them. It was a leftist instigated thing.
Okay. Can you tell me at any point in history where a leftist has gotten away with self-defense or has used self-defense? Even arguably self-defense, because here's what we do know.
That's a red herring. What is that?
But because here's the thing, because here's the thing.
Are
with
you
the Kyle
claiming
Rittenhouse situation? With the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, I'm kind of glad that the door and the slippery slope is kind of started. Like I'm kind of glad.
It's not a slippery slope, man. That's our Constitution. It's that your right to defend yourself shall not be infringed.
Because here's the thing.
It's
There's a lot of anti-fascists out here.
Everybody on the right thought that Kyle was going to be screwed for life.
There's a lot of anti-fascist and BLM activists out here who now know that, okay, all we need is, we don't even need to be touched. You don't even have to touch me. You don't even have to lay a finger on me.
Are you claiming there was
no finger laid on him? Kyle Rittenhouse was not touched by Rosenbaum.
Are you kidding me right now?
Where was he touched?
He was punched in the back of the head. He was hit with a skateboard. He was knocked to the ground.
I'm not talking about when he was running and got hit in the back of the head after he shot him. I'm talking about Joseph Rosenbaum.
So the most questionable thing about Rosenbaum is that Rosenbaum's chasing him down and Kyle's running away
chasing
from
him down, but not touching him.
Listen, come on, let's calm down.
But not touched him.
He was chasing him, and he was a clear and present danger to Kyle's safety.
Okay.
Somebody else shot a gun in the background while Rosenbaum was chasing him.
Do you see your standard for clear and present danger though? Is getting like somebody running at you. Now, do you know how many times?
Yes, somebody that's running and chasing you through the street that has said that they're going to kill you.
Because now it's going to make Proud Boys and all these fucking chuds think twice before running at an anti-fascist, because they ain't gonna know which one of us are armed. And we're gonna use that same logic, and I want you to apply it as well.
Good. We want it to be a standard. Do you not think that if somebody threatens to kill you and they start chasing you down, that you have the right to use self-defense against them?
Here's my thing. Look, if that's the standard now, then that's the standard now. I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of us who are late to the party.
You're making this argument as though like this is wrong, but if that's the rules, we're going to play by them too. I'm asking you, do you think that that's right? If somebody's threatening your life and they're chasing you down, do you think it's right to use self-defense against them?
I think at some point you give up your right to self-defense when there's certain actions you take. Like for example, you know the black man that just got off for shooting that cop when the cop ran into his house? Did you see that? And a lot of people were conflating it like with Kyle Rittenhouse saying, "Oh, look, they both got away with self-defense. One of them's black. I think his name was Coffee or something like that, McCoffee or." I'm
not familiar with that story.
Okay, well, a lot of people, especially on the right, were conflating, Kyle Rittenhouse and that story where a cop raided this dude's home, this black man's home. The man shot back and they dropped all the charges against him. But here's the thing: that black man didn't leave the house. That black man didn't go and insert himself at a Trump rally. And if he did, you would not hear one fucking person talk about, oh, well, he had the right to be there. Or,
man.
We wouldn't hear that. We would not hear that. We would not hear that.
Just because I choose to go somewhere in public that I don't have the right to defend myself?
I think you do. I want you to. I want you to defend yourself at any point in time. If you are not actively engaged in hurting somebody else, or if you're not
I was not actively engaged in hurting anybody.
Okay. Are you, because here's the thing, when you get out into the street, there's obviously a line that's drawn. There's a line that's drawn, and you got the media who tries to tiptoe on that line to where they're completely, you know, apolitical to it. Like they're not on any side. It's kind of like how you said you went there, you wanted to, you wore all black, and you didn't want to get misconstrued as like a right winger or somebody because you were afraid of what happened to you, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Well, the thing is that that's the thing about street activism, is that the line is drawn. If you were there and you were either on the side of the police and the the confrontations going on with the police, property destruction doesn't really involve you getting hurt because it's property destruction.
That's bullshit.
It's really not, though. I mean, because
If
here's the thing.
somebody comes up and you got to drive to work.
Do I have to?
Yeah.
No. Well, I mean, yeah. You could say I do drive to work. Yeah.
So if somebody comes up and damages your vehicle, it's just property, right? But
Well,
they're
I got
also
insurance.
damaging your ability to get to work and provide for yourself. It's just property, though, right? If somebody
Well,
comes and burns down
that
your house, it's just property, right? Like it's the middle of winter and you need your house to be warm. It's just property. If somebody like comes in your house and like steals all your food and steals your pantry and you don't got much money to it's just property. Like you don't got to
okay, but
eat.
that's
It's just
different than
property.
a window breaking at a store that nobody like. Here's the thing. And this is what I was trying to get to. I don't think anybody wants, like, here, if people who really abhorred violence and you just absolutely just you were this desperate to have violence stop. Like if you wanted violence to stop overnight, I think and I know that it could happen overnight if the US government completely overthrew its own capitalist system. You would see those symptoms fade. You would see, because the thing is, when you provide justice to a community doesn't really, like in the Ahmaud Arbery case. I honestly, I was kind of wanted to see a not guilty verdict just because I wanted to see, I wanted the streets to turn back up. Like because justice doesn't exist, and I think that jury did just say not guilty because they were scared of their own lives, and I think that they were afraid of their town burning down. But that's not justice to me, because then that's not
Wait a
really
second.
what.
Are you claiming that the Ahmaud Arbery case gave a not guilty verdict?
What? No, I'm saying that I feel like they gave a guilty verdict because they was afraid of what would happen if they didn't. That's what I think. And I think it was going to be guilty regardless of the outcome. I think it was going to be. I think if they had tried that in the same light as the Kyle Rittenhouse case, they would have given the benefit of the doubt to the McMichaels and said that they were defending themselves, because they would have claimed that Ahmaud Arbery charged and they didn't commit any crimes in up until Ahmaud Arbery charged, and I believe Ahmaud Arbery had the right to defend himself against some fucking, some old racist motherfuckers that were just looking for some shit. I think he has the right to defend himself, but I know how the justice system works, and I just seen how it worked with Kyle Rittenhouse, and I think that if there wasn't as much weight on the Arbery case and what would happen if a not guilty verdict, because nobody was really worried about a not guilty, like did what happened in Kenosha after the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict? Was there mass chaos and shit burning down? No. You know why? Because the people who died were white. Like there wasn't going to be no huge uproar. Like it wasn't like a black man getting lynched on video and the whole town ready to turn up if there's a not guilty verdict. There wasn't that type of atmosphere in Kenosha. That's why there wasn't no Antifa in Kenosha. That was why there wasn't no mass chaos in Kenosha. It wouldn't have been that way in Brunswick, Georgia. It would have been a lot different. It would have been a whole lot different situation, rightfully so. But that's what I'm saying. A lot of people will say that in the sense of, oh, that's terrible, but like rightfully so. I think it's time for people to overthrow the justice system, overthrow the capitalist system, And
With what?
it might well with, I mean, you would have to, first of all, you would have to put union power um, into you would have to seize the means of production first of all. So that would require probably a
So
decades
am,
of
am I
it would it,
correct? Are you promoting communism?
anarchist communism, yeah, stateless communism.
Anarchy has nothing to do with seizing the means of production.
No, I'm saying anarcho communism and anarcho syndicalism, which is basically just a stateless, classless society. It ain't got nothing to do with state power or depriving you. Like it's literally a workers. It's a government controlled by the working class, and I feel like that's what a lot of people in America are afraid of, and that's why workers' rights here in America are like the worst throughout the world, because there is no union power. The big Amazon, Walmart, the biggest employers can't unionize. So what is in power to make millions of workers not be able to unionize? And why the fuck wouldn't they unionize anyway, even if they didn't
I'm not
have?
saying that things are perfect and things can't get better, but do you really believe that the workers in America have the worst situation of workers in the world?
Well, the depravity, I mean, the
In
deprivation
in
of
China, are you aware that in China, there's certain corporations that literally have nets on the outside of their
what's the
skyscrapers for their working
where does
because it's
China rank
hold
in,
on, it's so common for people to go on their break at work and throw themselves out the building and kill themselves. These corporations have attached nets to the sides of the building to catch people trying to kill themselves.
well, I mean, we act like that doesn't happen here every day. I mean, veterans are killing themselves every day too. And what does that do to
That's a non
American?
sequitur. We don't have
But
people at Walmart. Walmart's a pretty crappy job to have. But we don't have people in masses killing themselves during their Walmart shift.
well, I mean, I mean, it's kind of subjective, because I mean, in masses could be, I mean, because China's population is way larger than ours,
But
and
it's just one building of a corporation. Like you have to, if 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 I have to make an assumption, I'm assuming that you haven't heard this before. Look up China and Foxconn. Look up their suicide nets. So many people kill themselves because of the working conditions that they have to endure day in, day out. These people live in like dormitories. They're basically slaves. They live in little cubicle living situations, and they basically are owned by the company, and they kill themselves so often at work that they have made suicide nets on their buildings to stop people from killing themselves. Like it's that bad.
well, I mean, that's the thing. We are able to look at what happens in China and what happens here in America, and if you're not a part of that group that is working in that warehouse or exposing yourself to terrible working conditions, you know, it's easy to see that America is just somewhere where, oh, it's great. Like it's, I mean they have what they call, and might not be as literal, but suicide shifts at Amazon. I mean they have, I mean, you got to pee in a bottle. You got, I mean, the working conditions in America, and not only the working conditions, like, because my dad was uh, like I said, he was a machinist, and he worked building aircraft wings, and he was exposed to all these chemicals, all these, and his union, his local union was a right wing union. It was ran by a bunch of "Don't Tread on Me" flag waving uh, Trump supporters, but they when they tried to have a strike, and they had picket line, they did the whole 9 yards. Like there was no union power, because they literally forfeited everything. They conceded. They ended up only getting paid like $100 a week for 4 weeks that they were on strike. And the thing is, I think if America, despite talking about China's working conditions and stuff, in America, if the working class, what do you think would happen if every worker in America, from the ports to the fast food restaurant, what if they just stopped working? What do you think would happen? all at once.
Starvation, looting, riot, death.
But what do you think would? I mean, yeah, in the short term, yeah, long term. What do you think would happen if every worker just stopped? They would obtain bargaining power. Then you have the system at its, because the system runs like a well-oiled machine. And when you have one fuck up, like even this supply chain bullshit, they 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 artificially inflate these things, like the CEOs and the corporate, the moguls and stuff. They artificially manufacture these shortages so that the consumer just willfully pays more, because they want to see how far can they go until they just bottom out and collect as much as they can and completely deplete the population of everything. Because I mean, what do you think, people are going to start rioting over $4 gas prices? No.
We're
Like, ain't
past
nobody going.
that.
So what's stopping them from charging $4 a gallon if nobody's going to do anything in retaliation?
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. Now, so do you think that the supply is short on gas? No, but it's artificially inflated because you have these corporations who are purposefully docking their boats, docking their ships, and artificially inflating this shortage. And that's the thing. Like, those boats that were out there on the water that was waiting to come in, like there was nothing stopping them from coming in, and the supply chain just keep going as usual. But what happened? They wanted to artificially inflate it. Now, the thing is, the opposite of that would be if the workers completely seized the means of production and then it ran according to the unions. So now here's the thing.
But
Like,
that's happened several times in history, and it always ends in
yeah.
disaster and genocide.
Well, America makes sure it ends in disaster. Like, America spends trillions of tax dollars to go into government with Honduras, Chile, wherever you want to think, and we overthrow their democratically elected governments because they don't bend to America's rule. Like, and
Do
that's
you
why
think that
America installs
America caused the Holodomor?
you have to fill me in more on that.
The Holodomor is the starvation and mass death of the Ukrainian population as the rise of communist Russia came to power. The communist Russia was a dictator, not a democratic election, and they started. It was the Bolshevik Revolution. They starved the farm workers and took all their produce and took all their the crops that they were growing and took them into the cities and starved genocide a whole group of people.
I would have to look more,
That was taking control of the means of production.
well, that's the thing. I mean, I mean, it would be naive to think that. It makes me wonder, what does an American government, what does it fear so much about communism? Like, what is it about workers having the power that scares the living shit?
The reason why people don't like communism is because it's an idea based on equal outcome. Everybody gets the same thing, but that's not how the world works. Some people work a little bit. Some people don't work at all.
But
Some people
are
work a
they getting,
lot.
or are
And
they getting
capitalism
they,
incentivizes people according to how much they work. Communism decentivizes extra work. It decentivizes using your hardest amount of work.
but
It
here's the
makes the
thing,
standard of work to the lowest amount of work that a person does. So the person that does a lot of work gets decentivized to do that work. And so the production of that society plummets rapidly and people start starving.
so why is it these fast food workers don't have no incentivization to work then? If capitalism reigns and America is the capitalist utopia of the world, explain to me why fast food workers and all these workers are striking and they can't even find nobody, because they should have incentives, right?
Because they're focusing on envy and covetousness. If you're
No,
ambitious and you're working hard, you don't settle for a fast food job. You might take a fast food job if you're in a low situation,
here's the thing.
and
What
that's what
if
you have to do at the moment. But if you're ambitious and you work hard, that's not the place
what
to
are you
focus your
working
energy
to?
on.
but here's the thing, like what the concept of debt, do you not think is fucking stupid, that you owe your government or that you owe anybody, like that you have to give a whole hour of your labor a day just to be able to afford a number 3 on the McDonald's menu. You have to put in a whole hour of your day just to get something off the McDonald's menu. Like, does that not in the least bit?
That's not the idea
That's
of
scream,
debt, and that
but
doesn't have
that
anything to
scream.
do with your government either.
No,
The
but
fact that you have to work
that's
to get
living.
things.
But work to get things. But here's the thing: under socialist or communist governments, the most expensive, because in America, the most expensive things you have are your necessities, right? Your shelter, your health, your education. These are the most expensive things in America. But yet they're the things that you need the most. You need shelter, you need health care, you need medicine, and you need education. I mean, that's an argumentative topic too, but you need education.
Education can be
Requirements.
free.
Yeah,
Education can
but
be free. You can go to the library and get education. You go on YouTube and get
yeah,
education. You go on the internet.
but that's the thing.
Indoctrination is very expensive. To
But
go to the government schools is very expensive.
the jobs
Healthcare, you don't
require
have to
that.
get healthcare.
So why do jobs require that? Why is it in order for me to send emails and go sit in a cubicle and wear my my nice suit every day? Why? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense why anybody would want to work and not get what they're getting. Because here's the thing: nobody has a problem paying taxes if you get out what you want or what you deserve out of it. Like, I think everybody deserves the basic necessities, whether it's shelter, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare. And to see people in America literally have to go without 2 out of 3 of those things, or all 3 of those things, just to be able to keep lights on at some apartment building, and and barely in the suburbs or in the inner city, and even in rural America, it's like, what education does good for you there? Like, why do I have to have a requirement of 4-year degree and an associate's and a bachelor's and all this shit? And like you just said, it shouldn't be like, you don't have to have those things.
You don't have to have
But
all
why?
that.
But if you're
I
gonna
think that's
make
all
twenty
stupid too.
dollars an
Those
hour, you
corporations do
are.
that, but you can
But
go make more than
if you're gonna make
$100,000.
25, but if you're gonna make $25-$30 an hour, you're
You
gonna have
can
to.
go make $100,000 a year in America working, like putting nails
But
in
if
walls.
everybody could do that, then why? Then there would be a working class, would there? If everybody could make it, like if it, like under this utopia, if everybody you looked at had, like, if they
You,
all
there
have the capability,
there are
but they
several
all can't
ways.
do it.
There are several ways for you to make over $100,000 a year pounding nails in America with no experience, no degree or anything. You have to have the ambition, and you have to be able to move. You have to be able to like do what it takes to get it. But
But it's kind of
that's a working
far
class.
reaching. It's
You
kind of
can
far reaching to think that everybody in the working class has the capability of all of them obtaining this what you say $100,000 a year. Like, that would mean how much of that wealth would not be going to the people who are in power, who are paying the politicians, who are paying the government. They make sure that don't happen. That's the thing. Like, you say it can happen, but there's powers that be that would make sure that no, we still need these people down here making $10 an hour. Like, that would still happen. Like, in order for there to be ultra rich, there has to be ultra poor. It's not like there can be ultra rich and then everybody in the middle and then nobody poor. That's not what capitalism does. It's not what it does. So, and that's the thing. Like, if somebody wants to be anti-communism and have their arguments against communism, fine. But when those arguments turn into pro-capitalism, it's kind of like, we live in the most incarcerated country in the world, and prisons are privatized, and you have people literally in prison over a gram of cocaine and have been there for 20 years. And that's like a common thing. Like, that's like just a common thing. Like, it's not even like, oh man, that's rare. Like, no, that's just 25% of the world's prisoners are right here. And if that was the case in China, if that was the case in Switzerland, if that was the case in Russia, every capitalist would use that as a way to say that, see, socialism just puts you in prison. But we have that right here. Like this is no utopia. So I don't understand why like people who, simp for capitalism all the time, like they don't understand that everything that they say communism brings already exists right here. People do starve. People do go to jail for nothing. People do go to prison for nothing. Like,
are you familiar with the Khmer Rouge? Pol Pot?
Some of Pol Pot, not all.
The killing fields?
I'm not too much of a history buff like I should be, but
are you familiar with what's going on in Venezuela right now?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. A little bit. No, I mean,
just like
as much as I can.
I'm not trying to own you, but I'm going to call you out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know what the Holodomor is, and you weren't familiar with what happened during the Bolshevik Revolution, and I mean you're promoting communism, and
Okay,
you're not
do you know
even
what happened in Cable
like
Street? Do you know what
aware
happened
of.
in Cable? Do you know what
You're
Cable
not even
Street is?
aware of what happened in these like great communist disasters
Okay.
that repeat themselves
Do you know
over and
what?
over and over.
Do you know what Cable Street is or Haymarket? Do you know
What's
what any
that?
of those? Well, if you don't know about it, I mean, wouldn't that be the same argument I can use? Like you don't know about these things, but
No, it depends what it is. What is it?
the Cable Street riots was a major working class uprising. Same with the Haymarket Square, and it was conducted by socialists, by communists, by anarchists. Well, Haymarket Square was in Chicago back in 1886. Cable Street, I believe, was 1938. It was in the 30s, I believe. I mean, if you want to do your research on it, but it's literally like every working class revolution throughout history has been carried out by communists, by socialists, by anarchists, all alike. Like the left is a huge spectrum from, you got your leftists, you got your anarchists, you got your socialists, you got your communists, you got your Maoists, you got your Leninists, your Marxists. I mean, it's the left is a huge spectrum of people who don't agree on shit. Like none of us on the left really agree on anything. Like there's nobody that argues with leftists more than leftists. I'll assure you. Like, and I'm sure it might be the same on the right. I'm sure y'all argue about all kinds of shit, whether it be fucking Christianity or fucking nation, race, whatever. I mean, different. Like some might support gay marriage, like Proud Boys, I guess, support LGBTQ. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of inner fighting among just every demographic of people in politics. So I mean, it's no different from us. And like me, personally, like I call myself an anarcho-communist because I support communist ideals. I just don't think it has to be state. I think it can be communal. I think governments can work on a communal basis. Like community policing is a basic, simple, way of a socialist state working. Like I think if these police officers had to live in these communities that they patrol, they wouldn't do it in the way that they do it. That's just one simple solution I think would fix a lot of issues involving policing in America. Healthcare. There's things that I mean, we could look through history and say, oh well, communism's been tried here and it didn't work. Like we all know that governments under the same name operate differently. That's why you have Stalinists. That's why you have Leninists. That's why you have Marxists, Maoists, like all these different times throughout history. But one thing that people do not talk about when talking about communist history is American imperialism, the empire. Literally, we were the only country to drop 2 nuclear bombs. Only country to drop a nuclear bomb, period. And we dropped 2 of them. And nobody sits there and calls us fucking evil. Nobody said, I mean, people do, but obviously I'm talking about a certain sect of people. And, like you have to be patriotic. You have to love America. You have to stand for the flag. You have to say the anthem. If you kneel during this anthem, you're fucking un-American. We're going to blackball you, but we're against cancel culture though. Like it's just people are getting tired of that shit. Like all of this shit that applies to the left never is applied to the right equally. Like it's never. And that's the thing with Kyle Rittenhouse. That's the same thing with a whole lot of shit. Like, and it's just you would have to be naive to even think otherwise. And I think that's what gets a lot of people on the left upset, is that we are held to a higher standard. Like, when the only time civility is ever talked about is when we're being uncivil. But whenever it's the right being uncivil, it's being politically incorrect and telling it like it is, and all they're just sensitive. They can't handle the truth. When we say something, it's, oh, you're not tolerant, are you? I mean, like, it's just, I mean, that shit gets old. I mean, it's washed up. Like, I mean, if you're against violence, then be a pacifist Buddhist and preach pacifism. But if people are going to be against Antifa violence, but support January 6th or any other incidents in case white people want to fucking massively uprise, like, I mean, it's not violence that these people are against, and that's what I wish people would understand when it came to using that argument
Who's
against us.
you're pitting a false dichotomy as though it's is either people are against or for violence. Most people are
Yeah,
for justified violence.
justified violence, right?
Anti
Who
violence
determine?
is
But would
not
you say
justified.
that's objective though? That's, I mean, what you would consider justified violence, somebody else might not. So I mean, who holds the key to that gate of when it's justified and when it's not?
Well, that's a
Because
that's a
when we
good
use
that's a
it,
good
and it,
philosophical question. Like, do you believe in absolute truth or do you not? I believe in absolute truth, and I believe when a bunch of little selfish kids go out and just throw tantrums in the street, they're not. I've talked to these people. I've been in these riots. They're not motivated by some deep philosophical morality.
I'm
They're
not.
being selfish about what they want and
The
what they
left doesn't
believe, and they're
have a
trying to
bunch
force it
of
on other people. They're fascists.
the left doesn't have a bunch of Ben Shapiro's walking around that know all these big words and stuff. And I don't think, I mean, I think that logic is kind of,
Yeah, why not? Why does it like you made a good
I mean,
point
because
there?
not
Like
everybody on the right can sit there and talk about what you said, Homodor, what I mean, or
the Holodomor.
Holodomor. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of fucking Trump supporters who'd be like, "What?" I'm sure they don't know. And I mean,
Yeah,
and that's the
but
thing.
the
You
thing
can't.
is that you're promoting communism and you
Mhm.
don't know like the great catastrophes
I'm
of
I'm not
communism.
I'm not so much promoting communism, because it's like I said earlier, like it's a
You are.
gradual, but it's a gradual thing. Like, I'm more promoting dismantling what exists now before getting to the step of putting something else in
Yeah,
place.
it's like the
Like,
Indian Kali Yuga philosophy, like the Great Destroyer, and we've got to just burn everything down around us, and it'll just magically grow up into a utopia from the ashes. And that's what Antifa does. They're good at destroying things, but they are completely inept at creating things.
what do you know the history of anti-fascism, and what when did anti-fascism come about, and
It came
who was it
about in
against?
Germany in the 1930s. It was Antifascista, and it was the communist militant arm fighting against the fascism of Italy, Mussolini, and it didn't really have anything to do with Nazism, but because of Nazism was there, Antifascista was against Mussolini fascism, but because Germany was the focus point, they started focusing on the German Workers' Party at the same time.
No, now
Uh,
what call like what tactics did they use, and what happened, like, during the Nazi rallies and the Nazi rallies that were going on, like, there was no, what did the opposition look like to the Nazi rallies in the street? I'm sure not everybody there was all gung ho about Nazism. So
Yeah, we're seeing the
what did
same thing in America today. We're seeing fascism on the rise and totalitarianism on the rise, and the vast majority of the population is following idiot rules just because it's easy to get along. People are wearing these masks that have been proven to do nothing. The side of these surgical masks that many people wear, it says right on the box that it does not protect against COVID. But these governments are making the governors are making these totalitarian mandates, which aren't legal. They're being overturned over and over, but they keep making them.
what
But
did
most of the population is just passively accepting this, just like it was happening in Germany. But that doesn't mean just because most of the population in Germany was being passively accepting the dictatorship rising from the Nazi Party does not mean that the disruption tactics of Antifa that didn't work. Antifa lost. Antifascista lost in Germany. They didn't work. But it doesn't mean just because the most population was being a bunch of passive pussies and following along with things doesn't mean that Antifa's destruction philosophy was good. That was bad as well.
But like I said, and it was a response to something. Like it was a response. So like you have people within groups, whether they're socialist, whether they're
That's how they
communist.
frame it. That's a frame.
Yeah,
The
but
philosophy was already there. Communism was already trying to rise up in the world.
mm,
Antifascista in Germany was a communist movement. They PR framed, they used the PR to frame themselves as a reactionary group, but they weren't. Everybody, these different things were rising up at the time. Fascism was rising up, Nazism was rising up, communism was gaining power, and they just used a PR
does
campaign to
communism
make them look like they were reacting against something. They weren't.
who all right, so the rich elitists who control everything, right? Like so let's say under communism, what would it benefit a whole bunch of rich oligarchs? What would it benefit them to have a communist government where the workers have the power? Like, don't you think like capitalism?
Have you read Animal Farm?
I haven't. No, I heard about it, but no.
Animal Farm is the answer to that question because any system that arises, those that take power become the oppressors. It doesn't matter if it's an oppressive form of capitalism, an oppressive form of fascism, an
So, do you
oppressive
think
form
the
of
right really
communism.
wants liberty, or do you think they want to take power?
I
Do you think
think
they really like? Because here's the thing: do you think the right wing is about liberty and actually, like how you, I guess, but you're an anarchist. You called yourself a philosophical anarchist. Is that what it was?
yeah, I
And
I'm worried about the right wing because I think
yeah,
that it's got this facade right now is that though it's focused on morality and just going good, but I think that that's just because there's material abundance today. But I think that the right wing has a very I think it's foolish for the left going around calling everybody on the right Nazis, but there's a real danger. Like Nazi, the right is where Nazis come from, and
mhm.
we have a danger today of the right pushing back against all this social chaos that's happening. And there's a big push for evangelical theocracy. There's a big push for white nationalism, and that's not happening right now. The left is calling that constantly and calling Kyle Rittenhouse a white nationalist, which he wasn't. Um, but if things keep going down this degenerate path, the extreme factions of everybody is going to have their chance to rise up, and there is a risk of the bad parts of the right wing to come up, like pushing their religion on people, pushing their racial superiority views on people. These things do have a possibility of coming up, but that doesn't justify the right from acting in their dictatorial and totalitarian ways on the left.
Well, that's the thing. Like the left, and I wish people understood this. The left doesn't have any political representation as opposed to see right wing
Are
populism in
you kidding
America.
me right now?
They don't. They don't. We don't.
All of
Who?
Congress, the White House, and the judicial system right now is controlled by the left.
Who?
Joe Biden.
You think Joe Biden's a leftist?
Yes.
Why? Like if he embodies the American corporate elite, why would so if capitalism, and we can agree that capitalism is a right wing philosophy, right? It's
No.
an ideology. It's
No.
capitalism is not a right wing system. It's just apolitical. It doesn't have any form of political leaning at all. So we understand Joe Biden's a capitalist. They will not Nancy Pelosi, none of them. They've been
Joe
even
Biden's
on
not a
record.
capitalist. He's pushing his Build Back Better plan right now. It's just pure and simple communism.
How is that communism when it's like the lowest of the low as opposed to what's been passed in history?
Communism, or Build Back Better program, is the seizure of the means of production.
How?
It's the country taking over the means of production to provide social
So
security
you think
for
the
the
right wing?
masses.
You think the right wing voted on that? You think you like after they struck down everything they wanted out of it, and it was at 3 point something trillion. Now it's at then when it got passed, it was like 1.7 trillion. You think it within that, which isn't even a lot of money after you disperse it? Like, so I
I
don't
don't
even
know what
understand
you're
how.
talking about the right wing voting about it. The
Like,
leftists have control of Congress and the executive branch right
so
now,
how are
and
capitalist?
they are
Wait,
pushing communist plans.
so are they doing it
The Green New
subliminally?
Deal is also communism. It's central planning and control of everything, every resource, every trade agreement, every financial
So
interaction.
who has control of that now? And why do you want them to keep control of it? Who has
It,
control of that? What you just talked about right now, like it would give
no,
the
I'm
government all
saying
these
that they're
powers.
trying to centralize control, and it's
Yeah,
not completely centralized right now.
right. So who do you want to have the power over that?
I don't. I
Over
want things to be decentralized. That was the American experience. Experiment was the decentralization of power.
Okay, so you don't think that? I mean, Antifa in general is a decentralized movement. Like I, we don't have any headquarters. We don't have any like. There's no anti-fascist meetings or website or anything like
Oh,
that. Like
there's definitely there
some
are
right wing troll.
100% anti-fascist websites and anti-fascist meetings. That is 100% not true what you just
Okay,
said.
okay, groups having meeting, but I'm talking about anti. It's kind of like, is there a capitalist meeting? Like, no, there's groups who support capitalism,
Let me
but they're not
ask you this:
capitalist.
why do you think that Antifa is pushing for state mandates?
There's a lot that's not. I mean, because that's the thing, and that's what I was saying about the left being splintered on a lot of shit. There's a lot of leftists and different
Almost
don't support that.
almost every medical freedom rally that happens has an Antifa opposition and attacking them and demanding that they submit to the state mandates.
How do you differentiate between who's real anti-fascist and who, like you even said earlier, you dressed up as Antifa, but you didn't go to try to confuse anybody. But how many people do you think do that? Do you think that's a thing among right wingers where they'll just dress in all black and go make themselves look so fucking foolish and so everybody can just laugh at Antifa? You don't think that's a common tactic? Because I've
No,
seen it happen.
I don't think it's a common tactic. I think it's a rare tactic. There are idiots that go out there and like try to disrupt things doing that. But whenever I've done it, I've just been an observer. Um, but how I just differentiate what I consider really Antifa and not Antifa is those that are advocating violence against innocent people, advocating for riots, advocating for property destruction, and taking part in all those, and defending those that are doing that, or the people that are attacking the media that are trying to film that kind of stuff.
Um, I mean, it just sucks because when it comes to violence and everything, like throughout history, we know that has been the default. That, like, for any progression to ever come, dating back thousands and thousands of years, has come through conflict of
Yeah,
some sort.
I agree.
It
I
always.
think that violence and masculinity is a good thing, but it must be justified.
Yeah. It's just the fact that what do you think Charlottesville was like? Because I was in Charlottesville the whole day, all the way up until nighttime. What do you think Charlottesville was like?
I wasn't there. I got into looking at all this stuff after the fact. I
Mm-hmm.
had some friends that were there. I don't know if you're aware of the guy, Black Rebel. He was a
Not
black man
familiar.
that was there wearing rebel
Oh,
flags.
The Confederate guy,
Yeah,
little short guy with the he wears the tactical shit a lot.
he wears
Is that
tactical stuff. He's not short. I'm 6 foot
okay?
2. He's about my height.
Okay, I know. I had somebody else in mind who was with the 901 Confederate group. I think I know who you're talking about.
But I try not to jump to like the extreme. I try not to jump to the extremes that make you like hate a group of people. So if somebody's trying to paint a picture to me and like the conclusion of their picture they're trying to paint is me having to hate a group of people, I assume that they're indoctrinated. So I look at Charlottesville, and sure, there was definitely some angry, like frail white guys that were there and chanting against the Jewish conspiracy, and I still don't even know what I think about that yet. There's reason to believe that the Jews have some questionable power over economics and government. I don't know what to think about that. That's not my hill I'm trying to die on. But I also think that there was several groups of people there that just didn't like the way that the country's going. I don't like affirmative action. I think affirmative action is an anti-white people policy. It's not lifting equally up. It's not a policy that makes sure that equality is happening. It's not punishing people that are doing discrimination things. It's punishing people for not discriminating in favor of certain groups. Like if you have a business of a certain size, and for some reason you live in an area or you have a job that's only interested in certain demographics of people, and only white people apply, and maybe a few non-white people apply, but they're not qualified. After you have a certain amount of employees in your company, you have to hire a person that's not white, whether or not that person is the right position for the right candidate for the company, and that is
Do you
something
not
I'm
blame
very against.
do you not blame history for that?
No, I
Like
believe in
literally, like, because here's
self-responsibility.
the thing: there's people that are alive today who couldn't drink from the same water fountain. So things like affirmative action came because we can't live in a society where it's colorblind.
I
Like,
disagree. I think people tend to want to swing from one extreme to the other, and like we could simply just have a committee investigating companies to making sure that they're not discriminating against people by their race or for bigotry or for other things like that.
but we know
But
that's what they
but
do
we don't
anyway.
do that. We've done the opposite. We
Well,
say
here's the
no,
thing:
because bigotry happened so long. We're gonna force you to act in bigotry in the other way now, and I don't think that helps.
I don't think reverse bigotry is a thing, but
It's affirmative
I
action.
I
That's what
could
it
see that.
is.
But the thing is, a lot of things exist and happen today because of what occurred over the last 400 years and longer, to be real. But there's an enhanced sense of pride in the black community because they have been generationally stripped of their pride. Like and it's been like, and here's the thing about like the right wing and racism and stuff like that. Symbology changes, things change, because nowadays you can't just be the CEO of a company going around saying the N word like you could back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s even. Like you couldn't just go around like, you couldn't be an NFL coach and just go around saying the N. You can't do that now. So the people who still have those feelings and who still want to, like John Gruden, for example, let's say there's many more that have that same belief system and want to be able to say those things, but they can't because they're afraid of what will happen to them. Now, what do those same people do to compensate for that? What do they do to fix that dilemma? They come up with other terms. They come up with other ways of saying things without saying it. Like now you got people saying 1351. If I say 1351, do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what 1351 is? I guarantee you, anybody watching this shit right now will know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. And it's mainly white dudes on the right who will say that
What's that mean?
13% of the population commit 51% of the crime.
That's true.
Even though we know that inner cities are policed way heavier than rural counties where everybody knows each other. The good old buddy system is alive and well in small town America. And if you're and if you're if you're in that town and hey Jim, I know you're drunk, just you're a mile away from home, just get home. That's the typical thing. Here that it don't happen like that. Like in inner cities, so that's why the disparaging number, and that's a systemic problem, and that's what people don't understand. It's like it's not like black people are inherently born with a trait that makes them violent or makes them
There's
poor
there's
or make
actually a theory. It's called the warrior gene, and
yeah. I've heard about
there's a
it.
theory that black people are naturally inclined towards aggression and violence.
Well, and here's the thing, and it's so wild because like in our face we see white people being violent as shit, dropping bombs, fucking taking over land, colonizing lands, like forming private militaries, like so white people are never given that same level of scrutiny. It's always, the big mean black man, like, I'm trying to remember. Do you remember the Christopher Dorner case?
The name sounds familiar. I can't bring it up at the
The
situation.
LAPD cop
Oh,
that
that
was,
black guy that was running around shooting cops.
yeah.
And
Well, no. I think
he was an
that
anarchist. He was an
no that
ex-cop, ex-military.
Are you talking about the one in Dallas, or are you talking about one years ago?
I'm gonna Google it on my phone real quick. I think Christopher,
You'll recognize the picture as soon as you see a big bald headed guy.
black guy, right?
Yeah, and what happened was he came forward to his department, to his commanding officer, and was going to come out with
Yeah, this is the
uh
guy that was running around shooting cops, ambushing cops, and shooting them in L.A.
yeah. Do you remember why?
Because he was disgruntled about he thought he saw things a certain way, and he was a
Well, he
whistleblower,
did
and
see.
then they fired him.
He saw a disabled kid getting picked on by his or getting abused basically by his partner. And when he tried to come forward with that, they let him go, and they fired him, and they took his pension away. They they like, he couldn't get a job anywhere else in any other department, and he just lost his shit. So here's the thing, like, a black man coming forward with something in a police department that is rife with racism, like the LAPD, we just know, like, that's historically known. That's a historically known fact. And that he's an example of what happens when people are fucking fed up. But see how you see Christopher Dorner, it's just crazy dude went on a shooting spree, killed all these cops. Like, but when you look in the story deeper, you see that it's very symbolic of the system. It embodies it. It tells you the story of what happens. Like, if a black person's like, hey, I want to change the system from within, we can make this a just system. We can bring justice, blah, blah. And when you even attempt to try, just same thing with leftists and BLM and anybody, if you even attempt to try to stand up to the government in a way that actually threatens the government, they will, just like how they seen him as a threat to their department by saying that, one of their officers is abusing a black boy. Like,
What
you
does that
know
situation have to do with race?
because that's a typical experience for, any black cop who's tried to go and do the right thing. They can't. The system is so
It has nothing to
embedded that
do
you
with
can't.
race. It has nothing to
Well,
do
how
with
not?
race. These police departments that are the blue line
Mm.
culture. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you go against the blue line, you get blackballed. Blackballed.
But who has the police department seen as the problem or the enemy,
Anybody that disagrees with them.
which has been historically.
You're making that claim. I'm not going to finish it for you. I don't see that claim being true.
So you see white militias and white militia groups, how, like for the Bundys, for example, on the Bundy Ranch, when
They weren't a
when
militia.
yeah, the militia, yeah, and
No,
they were actually,
the Bundys were not a militia.
no, not I'm talking about at the Bundy Ranch when the militias did come.
No, there was no militia
And
there.
so who was pointing the sniper rifles at the Fed agents?
They weren't sniper rifles. They were just rifles. It was just a bunch of ranchers and farm men and people from the Idaho to Utah area that has been consistently for several hundred years ranched by Mormon families, and it was a lot of those people were related to each other.
See,
It was individuals. There was no militia.
you're able to dig into the history and pull out a justification as to why that situation
No, no,
happened,
I'm
but
not justifying anything. I'm rebutting a claim that you make. You said the militias were there. There was no militias at the Bundy incident.
Do you
It
think?
wasn't it wasn't a militia. Like the previous incident before they took over the federal building, they had that standoff on that road with BLM, and that wasn't a militia either. That was just a group of farmers and residents from that area that brought their rifles out to stand against the government tyranny.
What government tyranny was that?
BLM was trying to take over the land and claim that public land was now owned by the Bureau of Land Management and could no longer be grazed on by the public. They were saying this is now federal public land, but the public is not allowed on it anymore. They had hundreds of years of the tradition of open land being grazed by their cattle, and that's how the ranches worked in that
Do you
area.
have?
And the BLM came in and tried to federalize all the land, and they started shutting off access to the cattle ranchers' grazing opportunities and access to water. It was the federal government doing a power grab, and the local citizens that had families living there for generations stood up and said, "No, you're not doing this."
Now, do you not think that groups of people shouldn't be able to do the exact same, other than, like, let's say Native Americans? Do you think they shouldn't be able to do the same thing with, like, Standing Rock, or when they're building pipelines through their reservations? Should they not be able to do the same?
I don't know. I didn't like Standing Rock because it was it, I think that the people should be able to have their own communities, and I'm very big against big government. Standing Rock to me seemed like it was just like I don't know enough about Standing Rock to speak on it. I felt it
Right.
was like an ideological thing rather than like people supporting their own like land. But also, I worked in the fracking industry in North Dakota for a while, and I'm tired of all these like ludicrous ideas that like people push. Like that pipeline wasn't necessarily going to ruin their water table. And the fracking doesn't ruin the water table. It's all that stuff's bullshit lies.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I come from the mindset that any group, because see, the difference in with America especially is you got people with an individualist mindset and a collective mindset. And a lot of people hate collective mindsets because it puts the rights of groups of people over an individual. And I think that's what a lot of people have a problem with in America is groups of people getting rights as opposed to individual, and they equate that to their individual liberties getting stripped from them. And the problem with that is that in the process of giving people, their individual liberties, you are able to strip groups of people of their rights. Like, and you see historically, like, when you give but hang on real quick. Migrating. Shit. uh when you give shit, what was I saying? When you put people in a system, or you have them be born into a system, like, for example, like the projects, like, no, like black people being born in the projects, um is an example of systemic racism. And I know a lot of people say, well, you can get out of it, but that's not, like, we're not, we're still one generation, like,
How
and that's what a lot
how
of people
is
don't
how is
understand.
being born in the projects systemic racism?
How, I mean, because why are they called projects, and why are they so mismanaged? Why are they left to rot? Why are they why what
They're
because
literally things that the government built to give people free or very cheap housing.
what
And
now why would
I
they
say the
need
reason why
why would they need that? Why would
because
they need very
they
cheap
weren't
housing?
self-sufficient.
Why were they not self-sufficient?
Because they bought a set of magic beans and they sold their 40 acres of land and their mule for a chance to live in the big cities.
Did they ever get their 40 acres? Because that'd be a lot of acres to give out. I mean, was that ever even like? I know they declared. That they wanted 40 acres and a mule, but did they get that?
I don't know the full story, but I know that a bunch of people did, and they just sold it for like pennies on the dollar. But to not go that deep for the projects, the reason why I think the project sucks is when you treat people like babies when they're not babies, and you provide them everything they need without making them work for it. They act like children, and they don't take care of themselves. That's why I think communism is one of the most destructive things you can do to people. Like socialism is like when you provide for people. Look what it's done to the American family. Um, Welfare has just destroyed the American family. First the black family, and then the white family as well. Like when once they start paying women to not have a husband or a father in the house, like the family structure breaks down really fast.
But so you don't see that as a systemic problem? You think that's just the way? Like you think that just kind of just like spilt paint, just made its own? Like that wasn't like organized. Like you don't think none of this is built to do just that, like deprive certain communities of certain things and exploit them
No,
for their labor?
I think it's the leftists with nonsense, bleeding heart utopias ideas that form these policies, and there are sometimes people on the right that use those foolish intentions for the evil. Like Franklin D. Roosevelt, like said, I'm going to cuss here. I'm just going to say it. He said, if I can't quote it right now, I'm going to paraphrase horribly. He says, if you give those, I'm going to say it because this is what he said. I'm quoting something. He
Okay.
said, if you give those niggers welfare, they'll be voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, but
Yeah, and
that's
that's fucked
not
up.
a. I mean, you won't get a leftist to even argue that though. Like you will never find a leftist to sit there and argue the opposite of that, because like I said earlier, Democrats and Republicans are historically a right wing, white dominated party. Like that's just, and what happened was you had the Dixiecrats of the South who, who supported segregation, who supported Jim Crow. And when the voting rights passed, they when he said I'm going to have them voting Democrat the rest of their life, that meant black people were given their own party basically, because that now black people were voting Democrat. So what did all the Southerners do? All the Dixiecrats, what did they do? They switched to the Republican Party. It was easy. It's like if a black person's going to be in a party, it's going to make a white person want to be in the opposite party. And that's the philosophy for the Republican Party back then, was we'll just take over the Republican Party and we'll leave the Democrat Party to the black folks, and then the fucking the white liberals who want to attach themselves to it and and try to make a way there. But the Southern Dixiecrats, like, what do you think the Democrats back in the day would say about BLM today? What do you think they'd say about Antifa? What do you think they did say about people like us? Let's know. You ain't even got to say what would they say. What did they say about us? They hated us.
Any
Why did
anybody 100 years ago would have said that Antifa, and they would have rightly said that Antifa and BLM is a bunch of
but why but why
rioting degenerate criminals.
but and those people saying that, what are they? Like, are they just like this like alpha species or something that just superior to everybody else? Like they're not a part of the same system, and they're not, like, that's the thing. And that's, we've always been deemed the enemy. Everybody throughout history, even MLK was the most hated man in the world, like, or in the country at the time. Like he was the most hated, yet the most nonviolent. So it's like it didn't even matter about the violence. It didn't even matter about the preaching of peace and pacifism and stuff like that. MLK was still assassinated, still had the FBI after him, like wiretapping him and shit like that. I mean, so we've always been the enemy. It doesn't matter whether we're violent or non-violent or not. That's why a lot of people are just like, well, if you're going to treat me the same way, if you're going to call me a communist, terrorist, socialist, libtard, and all that shit, for even being nonviolent, then why not just go ahead and just go the full way? Like, that's
Because
not
it's
going to descend
wrong.
that.
It's
But
wrong
what's wrong?
to use
But
violence
here's the
against
thing,
innocent people to
like
get what you want.
and this is where, but this is where like the thought police comes in, because it's like it's not just our actions that people hate; it's what we believe. That's why we have been fighting for what we've been fighting for. Like, it's, and for generations, whether it's LGBTQ rights, immigrant rights, black rights, working class rights. Like, it's just a historical fact that we have always been deemed the enemies. And for example, just real quick, just type in Cable Street real quick. I just want you to read to me what you find on Cable Street, and tell me what you think about that action, and if you would consider that non-justified violence. You gotta go to work.
Oh, about to go to work. Should I have a drink? Uh, what about the whole project thing? Aren't people the product of their environment? Like,
There's no concise, quick thing here. It looks like something that happened in London in the 1930s. I'd have to read for a while. There's nothing
Yeah,
concise that comes up.
I think you'll find some good stuff there. And I'm when I say this, man, like, I get, like, here's the thing. I've been in, like, doing anti-fascist work. Like, I've been on the street with Boogaloo groups. Like, I've been in the same threads, organizing threads with Boogaloo groups. United Pharaohs Guard was one that was in Louisville with us a lot during the Breonna Taylor unrest and stuff. Like, there's a lot of middle ground that the left and like the right can agree on most. And I think that's where a lot of Boogaloo groups kind of splintered last year, was when, like, a lot of Boogaloo groups came out in support of BLM, and they came out in support of, you know, you know, um, leftist. Like, there's a lot of leftist Boogaloo groups. So I mean, I'm sure there was a huge splinter between a lot of them there. But I found a lot of middle ground with them. Like, I got on a lot of calls with them. We talked about a lot of stuff. Like, I think gun laws are racist. Like, we agreed on that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that like, especially socialist leftists like me, like, we can agree on a lot of things when it comes to, you know, fighting back against an oppressive system. But it's just, people are going to have to see that system as oppressive before they can do anything. Like, if you don't see this system as oppressive, then you're not going to be somebody that ever sees that there needs to be change. Like, even if you think there needs to be the littlest amount of change and you're not doing anything to make that change, then that change isn't that dire to you to do, So
Did you go to college?
for a year, I went to that Christian college, and that's why I told you that was my turning point, because all the shit I was seeing. Then I actually finally did read the Bible, and it just turned me completely away from religion. And I just partied until I ended up coming back down to Tennessee. I just couldn't do the small town shit. So, but I mean,
Just trying to
I don't know, man.
understand, like, where your shift came from, like what motivated. Like we already talked about how you said most of the people in your life are black, but you're white and you come from a white culture.
Yeah.
It's like something had to have happened to where you broke away from the comfortable patterns and habits of your culture to reject that and to hang out with another culture instead.
I think it was a lot of resentment, because
And
a
I'm not
lot of
saying
my
that's good or bad. I'm just trying
yeah,
to wonder what that
uh,
was.
I think it was due to a lot of resentment to, you know, because here's the thing, and I'll be candid about this, man. Like, I was picked on, in school. Like, not when I went to public school. When I went to public school, I fit in. Like, I had friends. Like, it was great. I went to private school, and everybody was cliquey. Everybody was very, upper class. You could tell there was a lot of upper class, a lot of the soccer moms, the moms driving in the big GMC trucks with just, you could tell that they didn't even work, that they probably fucking lived on, the husband's money while they it just being around and the friends that I did, like, quote unquote friends that I did have, like especially like being on the golf team and being around other kids who had parents, like it's just, I think I had so much resentment against upper class people that it drove me further away to where I am now, like to where I just want to completely rebel against the system that created people like that mentality and that entitlement and that, the fragility, the fact if you say anything that those people don't want to hear, they will ruin your life. Like, and I think that's why a lot of people get on this train of like wanting to do the same thing, because we've been canceled our whole life, like leftists and even like people in general, like the people in the punk scene, the emo kids, the kid that the kids that just was never included in anything, like I think we get off by seeing the same people that we grew up experiencing being, the bullies or the upper class, just entitled kids, like just seeing them, upset over anything. I think we like that. I think, the more that they are upset about us, I think it feels like we're doing our job. Like, and I think it does have a lot to do with the resentment of that culture of people. Like, I don't want to be, when I die, I don't want to be associated with that group of people. I don't want to be remembered as just being a part of the fray. Like, I don't want to, it's just, uh, I decided this is how I want to live my life. Like, I ain't going to be here. Yeah, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but I think, when it's all said and done, the things that I've done in the street, the things that I've done, the messages I've given people, whether it be, on anti-fascism, whether it be just anything in general, just people take what I say to them and they do what they want with it. Like, I don't, I'm not somebody out here trying to, infiltrate anything or fucking like do some crazy wild shit. Like, I believe what I believe. I've done what I've done, and it's just, I just felt like I had to do something, and this is what I felt like it was. Like, if I grew up in a small town, I probably would be a Proud Boy or doing some shit with some white nationalist group out there. Probably would start my own. If I grew up in that culture, stayed in that culture, if I decided to just stay where my dad was working on the golf courses, I could have just said, hey, this is where I want to be the rest of my life. Like, I probably wouldn't be like what I probably wouldn't support what
Do
I
you
support
think
now.
Do you think Proud Boys are a white nationalist organization?
I think they're on the libs organization. I think anything like just how I was just telling you, like we just want to fucking whatever pisses them off, that's what we like. I think that's what they are to us. I think whatever we like, I think they'll take symbols and they'll they'll say, oh, we support gay rights too, and it's like to own us. It's not even like they actually support LGBTQ rights or that they actually support ending racism. Like, they just use it as like a gotcha. It's like, oh, we got this black dude in our group. Like, what can you say now? Like, it's just like that's just weak. Like, it's just funny to me. But um, like, I think the Proud Boys are desperate, especially like trying to control the media. Like, because the thing with Antifa, we're good at controlling the media narrative, and that's what I've partaken in, and that's what I've dedicated a lot of like my anti-fascist work to, is dictating the narrative. Like, when you look at the narrative of Murfreesboro, when the White Lives Matter rally tried to come back in October of 2017, just a couple months after Charlottesville, you know, we organized a large Antifa unit. It was about 100 of us. We went to the Murfreesboro Square where they were supposed to come, and the organizer ended up tweeting out that he was shutting it down because Antifa was there. That they've had that rally there plenty of times in the past and never had anybody show up. So we showed up, they didn't show up. I think that's how you control the narrative. Like, and guess what? They spent $400,000. City of Murfreesboro spent $400,000 because I was bringing an anti-fascist group up there. They boarded up all these windows and all these businesses, and yet when the White Lives Matter people didn't come, there was nothing broke. We went about our day, and I got an article I can send to you. I was actually in a car that was getting picked up outside the rally by a Huffington Post reporter, and we got tracked by a black GMC truck, and there was about five, and I was in the, we was all communicating and stuff, and there was like 5 other black GMC trucks that was following like 5 different cars, and I guess the car that was following the truck that was following us didn't know that I was in a car with a reporter. And so they chased us through Murfreesboro. Like I ended up having to pull out my gun, and he had to pull into a driveway, and he ended up backing out, and somehow we left. But there's an article about it. Like, he wrote a very good Huffington Post article about it. I'll send it to you. But I think just go ahead.
When you say that you're trying, and what you're good at is controlling the narrative.
Yeah.
To me, you sound like Joseph Goebbels, and you're like patting yourself on the back for being a good propagandist and like manipulating people's minds and controlling how people think.
I don't think I have that much reach, actually. Like, you get on any social media shit of mine, like, I don't have.
Yeah, we're not talking about the level of reach. I'm talking about like what you're promoting, like what you're I don't know. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but you're promoting what you're doing, and I think it's a bad thing to control people and how they think. I think the idea of free speech is to let everybody talk and let people express themselves, and let people make their own minds. Do you want the media
to control the narrative? But you wouldn't want the media to control the narrative, right? Because the media is the
no. But my goal isn't to stop them from speaking their point of view. It's to make sure that I'm allowed to speak my point of view, and to also for my ability to call them out when they lie.
Well, like, the freedom of speech, it only protects you from government interference. Like, if you say something, like you just said, like earlier, just for example, when you said the N-word earlier in response to
I'm not talking about the law of freedom of speech. I'm talking about the philosophy of freedom of speech.
Right. But I mean, nobody's stopping you from that speech, though. Like you don't have a right to a platform. Like, just because you have a free speech, but you can't go speak at Berkeley.
People are stopping me from that, and Antifa does that a lot. Antifa has been successful in getting me shut down on many of my social media platforms just because I say things they don't like. They twist what I say, and they find a reason for the algorithms to like claim that I said something against their terms of service, which I didn't. I've had my Twitter account shut down, and this isn't just Antifa, largely Antifa, but also just the social media platforms. Like, I got my original Facebook account for Villain Report shut down because the first time I was starting to investigate what Proud Boys were, I was going to go to their Delta Park Portland event in September last year, or October maybe, and I simply posted their flyer. And I asked them questions like, what are these guys? Are they actually racist? And my account got banned just for doing that. And then my freedom of speech has been stifled many times. I've had several of my accounts shut down.
Do you want me to cipher through all of the shit that I've been banned for?
No, I'm not having this be a tit for tat thing. No. I'm not comparing myself to you. You said that my free speech wasn't being stifled. Right. And I'm saying, no, that's not true. It has been, very much so.
Well, I don't think, but then we're talking about speaking on the, like, speech was never, the internet was never a thing when freedom of speech was included in the First Amendment, or when
I'm
it was
not
included
talking about
off
the
the
freedom
charts.
of speech of the law. I'm talking about the
I know.
philosophy that men should have the right to self-determine and express themselves without other men
But
lording over
but there's
them.
literally nothing stopping you, not even an individual stopping you from going outside right now with a megaphone and go to the corner of any town you, or in any town you want, and say whatever the hell you want. And there will be people there
There are
to
several things.
say
Like for
something back.
one, there's many laws that I could get arrested for doing that. And another thing, if I expose myself too much publicly, Antifa and leftists will try to dox me and give my address out, give my job out, and give me lose access to bank accounts, lose access to going into certain businesses, and that's a tactic of the left. Let me close this up real quick. Let me ask you some spitfire questions real quick. So, do you think it's okay for Antifa to attack people that are filming their events?
Um, well, it depends. Like, what's your purpose of being, like, what, like, are you there to, like, because here's the thing, you was talking about being doxxed, and you could
Let's
dox,
use
but here's my
Spitfire.
thing.
Yes or no? Is it okay for Antifa to attack people for filming them in public?
It's a gray area.
Do you
That's a
think it's
gray area.
okay for Antifa to attack private property?
Another gray area.
Do you think it's okay
I
for
mean,
for Antifa to indiscriminately attacking police in general?
well, again, there's nuance there. Like, there's nuance there that,
Do you think
like,
it's
you was
okay
talking
for
about
Antifa to
absolute.
dox people and get them fired from their jobs and kicked out of their homes?
That's what happens to us. That's what happens to us every day. Every day that happens to us. And the only reason it don't happen to me is because they know I'm not hiding. Like, but I mean, I could show you right now all the death threats that me and my family get. Like, I could
Well,
show you, like,
one thing
people
that I
pull up to my
see
house.
that the left claims big time is that the right is just trying to have power. I don't necessarily see that always on the right. I don't see that as a specific trait of the right. Yeah, it does happen sometimes. But what I do see is that the people that are on the left, the activists, all they're doing is seeking power, and all they constantly express ideas of no morality. The only thing that is there is by any means necessary to get themselves in power. So when you answer all of my questions as gray areas, like sometimes it's okay to indiscriminately attack cops. Sometimes it's okay to just attack people's private property. It's okay to attack people that are just filming people doing things in public. Like there's no morality in that.
The thing
It's a
about it is,
breakdown to just
for every
seeking
action,
power.
for every action, there's an equal or opposite reaction. That's one of the third law. That's one of the three laws. One of Newton's three laws is, for every action, there's an equal and opposing reaction.
Yeah, and if you don't
So
believe in
if you
God and
have
you think
cops
that you
indiscriminately,
think
here's
that
the thing:
they're
if you have cops indiscriminately attacking black folks and killing them in certain situations, it would be naive to think that it ain't gonna happen back. Like, it would it's just that's just the natural order of things.
but you're saying that one right or one wrong justifies another wrong. And you brought up a physical law, and I can only understand why you would compare a physical reality to morality and a human condition if you were looking at the world through a materialistic, atheistic worldview to where there's no God and there's no absolute truth, there's no absolute morality. But if the story that's rooted in Christianity, I'm not a Christian, but is also what's rooted in Western civilization is sometimes the right thing to do is self-sacrifice. So sometimes the right thing to do is to do the right thing regardless of the outcome. To do the right thing, if it gets you killed, if it defames you, if it destroys your life, you do the right thing, not because of how it's going to affect you, but because of how it will come out in the end. So you justify
That's what we do.
like maybe there's some cop that did something wrong to a certain person for a bigoted reason. That doesn't justify doing something to some random cop randomly and hurting them.
You can't have the thing is, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like the cops can't do what they do and expect there to not be those circumstances. Like you can't. It's like you can't go and bully somebody and then expect somebody to not knock you out one day. Like you can't do that. Like
No, but what you're talking about is that somebody goes and bullies somebody, and then the people that are interlocked with that person that got bullied just goes randomly and bullies somebody else. That's different.
well, is it somebody else who's a part of that same group? Because all cops like they wear a badge. They're part of the
that's
same.
Tribalism. That's like why we're having this stupid racism thing today that's happening, and this false racism is coming from everywhere.
There's no group more tribalistic than right wingers. There's no group like what rule
No,
America.
I think Black America is far more tribalistic than a political.
But here's the thing: Black America is born and was born into white America. So they are born into the system that they didn't create. White people created it. So if there's a problem within the Black community, it would be because the white people in the system that they are forcing all of us to be born into. I just
don't believe that kind of stuff. You're talking about Black people as though they're infants, as though they have no control over their life.
I'm talking about the city. I'm talking
about the whim of everybody else.
I'm not talking about.
I believe Black people are equal human beings to any
but they're
other
not
race.
Treated that way. I mean, you believe that.
It doesn't matter how they're treated. Just because I'm treated bad in some situation, it doesn't say any truth about what I am.
But you could say, like, saying you want it or saying it should be this way doesn't make it that way though. Like you individually might see Black people as equal. The system in which we're talking about doesn't, and there's millions of other people in this country who don't. Now, you individually, I can't argue what you individually believe. That's what you stand on. But I know for a fact millions of people believe that Black people are inferior. They are inherently violent. They are racist. They are racist against white folks. They are entitled. They are lazy. They like this is the common theme. Like, so you say I look at Black people like this monolithic. What do you say about the people who look at them in a way that says that they aren't deserving of these things? Like I say they are, and I say that the system treats them like that. I'm acknowledging a reality. You're saying that you think that they should be seen and treated as equal, but do you acknowledge that?
I'm saying that I see them as equal, and what I'm saying is it doesn't matter what other people think about you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change what's true about you.
But we're not talking about people. We're talking about a system that was created by people. That
the system
people
is an
live
abstract thing. There's no such thing as a system. There's only people.
So what is this government? Like, is it not a system?
It's a collection of people.
A collection of people that create a system, like policies in place. Like you would agree that there's laws that were made hundreds of years ago that still exist today, but because they're still on the books, they haven't been amended. Like there's still laws that we abide by today that are old.
What I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter what people think about you. That doesn't change what you actually are. Like the whole world can think you're one thing. The whole world could think I'm a triangle. But if I'm actually a circle, the only thing that matters how the whole world sees me is if I start believing their misperceptions of me. If I start believing I'm a triangle and I'm a circle.
But what if you're born into a government and they treated all you circles the same and they treated you as second class?
Everybody's born into the world. We're born into this world.
Yeah, we're born onto a piece of land that is.
No, I'm talking about we're born into this reality that's fallen and it's corrupt and it's not perfect and there's problems and people hate each other and you suffer through your life.
But
everybody's born into
with
that.
Land, right? You said we're born into this world. There can't be a problem with the world. It's just a big rock, right? Like we're just born onto this big rock. So when
I say the world, I mean existence. We're born into this existence that's not perfect, and
but what is in this world that's not perfect? Like what? Why can't it? Why isn't
hatred, murder, the heart of man? And that's the big thing I have a hard time with Antifa, and I'm enjoying talking to you. I think me and you would have a good time having a beer and having a burger and stuff. But there's fundamental things that you express that I strongly disagree with. You seem to focus on the evil in other people's hearts as though you're not yourself struggling to deal with the evil in your own heart? Like, you paint a story about like other people are evil and not you.
Well, because what I do isn't out of evil. Like I again, we are responding to evil. Like and you might say, well, you're responding to evil with evil, like that. Like, I don't know if you know about the paradox of tolerance, but if you tolerate intolerant shit, you are complicit in that intolerant shit. Like, if you tolerate, like, so you have to be intolerant of intolerance. Like, I know that that's why they call it a paradox, but it's kind of like horseshoe theory. It's like like people say that the far right is just as bad as the far left, or just as extreme. Like, it's like they're the same, or like, and like these paradoxes that people get caught up in. Like, there's things that exist, like you said, pure hatred, but who hates who and why do they hate? Do black people hate white people because they're white?
Yes.
Do they create systems that throw white people into prisons and jails and pull them out of their cars, and is that their basic history? Is that their what they're historically known for? No. It's just the fact that, acknowledging reality, that we are born into a world that we inherited a system created by men who were dumb. Like like a lot of those, like we still live, like, the Constitution was written by dudes who didn't even know where the sun went at night. Like, they didn't know, they like, these
That's
people are
not that's
stupid.
not that's not true.
I mean, it is. I mean, but it is, like,
No, the
when you think of the
Copernican
people that
revolution
ran
and
government, it wasn't a
Galileo and
bunch.
I can't even say his name right now, but that happened far before the U.S. Constitution.
But I mean, but I'm saying, like, the fairy tales that people that believed even up 60 years ago. So if you can go back 200-300 years where they still believed witchcraft was punishable by death, or they believed Wiccans were should be burned at the stake. Like, that was a common thing. Like, it wasn't like the government, the men in the government were just all a bunch of, like, oh no, that's wrong, we shouldn't be doing that to people. I mean, they just believe something different. Like, just because they believe something different doesn't mean we should kill them. They didn't think that. They didn't even think that about black folks, much less Wiccans. Like, they still thought they didn't even consider black folks human beings when they wrote the Constitution. So we're still basing, in this government, in this system that we're born into, with this Constitution and everything, was written when a whole race of people
Who
weren't
do you
even considered
think?
human beings.
Which of the writers of the Constitution do you think thought black people weren't human beings?
Jefferson signed it, didn't
He signed
he?
it, yeah.
Jefferson. Yeah, he's a slave owner. I mean, if you was a slave owner, I would assume that you didn't think that they were human beings, unless you just thought you were just enslaving people. I mean, and that's the thing. That's where it comes down to. Even if you didn't think, like, even if you thought they were human beings,
So I got lost him. Hey, I was able to get Corey back online there for a little bit, and we talked a little bit more to close out, but the Zoom recording failed on that portion. So I teased him about living in Tennessee and asked him if he lived in a swamp or a holler, and asked him if instead of drum circles at Antifa riots, if they use banjo circles in Tennessee. He's laughing about that kind of stuff, but we talked about maybe doing another conversation down the road, or maybe doing a Discord chat or a Twitter space, and opening up for discussion on this type of stuff. So as you guys know, I hope, my goal is to create conversations across the aisle to put an end to all the division and hatred that's growing, and try to create some unity and understanding. Hopefully that can happen before we go into collapse or civil war, or the negative things that we're headed towards. But anyways, if you liked my content, check me out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Telegram.
Give me a like, subscribe below if you want to see more content like this. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. Anyways, the Villain Report is out. Thank you.